Okay, testing, testing. One, two, three. Okay, hopefully we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this very special edition of Truth Warrior. I'm so happy to be here with you. Today's date, it's historic. Friday, May the 8th, 2026, the day that we got more information on this UFO, UAP, ET subject from the American government than we've ever got before. No, it's not the whole ball of wax. So many questions are still flying around. Everybody's got their theories about that. But it's always a good time when these events happen to bring up the bigger research that has already been done independently. For those of you who just sit there and go, I don't want to trust any damn thing the government tells me, I totally feel you. I understand. It has been quite a roller coaster. I personally take a little more nuance with that in thinking that not everybody's evil. There's been people, and I've been speaking to people behind the scenes on this for many years now. There's been people behind the scenes in government, in military, even in the corporate world, in the aerospace world that know something about this and have wanted to get this information out, but they keep hitting a ceiling. And so I think it's not all of the secrecy that has been around this subject coming from governments is just for some evil purpose, although much of it is also that. We have to remember, like, nuanced thinking, don't get stuck in binaries. It's a very, very, very deep subject. There's no way I can cover it all in this podcast, but I'm going to do more on this summer, especially because now everybody's going to be talking about it. And we've been slowly getting more information from various sources about this for many years now. And we're seemingly reaching some kind of a crescendo. And so I'm just going to cover some of the stuff they've been dropping. I've been saving some bookmarks on X as this has been rolling out. I have not read all the files yet. I'm going through them bit by bit. It's only 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. They were released hours and oh no, 5 hours ago or something. So I'm just going to get into the subject. I've done some stuff on this in the past. For those of you watching over on Substack, hopefully we're all good to go over there. And you can go and check out one of my premium episodes on Substack called The Extraterrestrial Question. It's a great overview. Just going to share a few things from that one, but I'm going to leave that one intact for you to go and check out whenever you're interested in looking at it. And there we go. Now I can see your comments. So go check that out on my Substack. But if not, just park yourself, put me on in the background. I've got lots of stuff to go through with you. I'm going to share a bit of my history with this subject, the stuff that I've done. I'll give you my perspective. And I just want to start off that I always have to give these kind of disclaimers. We can disagree on theories, beliefs, conclusions on this subject, and we can still be friends. That's the good news. We don't all have to agree. We don't have to be down each other's throats. I am going to get into some interesting aspects of psychology when it comes to this subject. I'm going to get into some aspects of why I think both the dogmatic religious perspective is flawed when it comes to this, what's missing there, what's motivating that. And at the same time, we don't have to throw all of religion out. I'm going to get into also how the mainstream materialist, Darwinian, you know, we've already figured out the physics, there's no way they could visit us types of people. I think they're also missing the boat. So I think we've been stuck in just general people that are just coming into this subject out of curiosity. They run into these two camps predominantly. Like it right now, if I post anything on my X about this subject and about a UFO case, about a testimony or just an idea on it, it's just littered with a variety of people saying, angels or demons, or nope, there's no way ET could ever contact us. They're just too far away. It's ridiculous. You guys are a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists reading into everything. Or this whole thing is Operation Blue Beam. It's a big psyop. It's been a psyop run by whoever, and la 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 la. So those types of theories are basically, I just call that low hanging fruit. And so what I'm trying to do in this show today is to at least expand the horizon of the subject so that no matter what place, wherever you find yourself, and you can have your own theories and beliefs on this, we can all research this together. It's a big, giant mystery wrapped in mysteries and mysteries and mysteries. So No one is going to have the final say on it. And but at the same time, at least you'll have a better overview of what is already known in the public domain about this subject. I'm going to go through some of the stuff they're dropping from government files, which is always just great. But to me, that's just supporting evidence or supporting information for what we've already been figuring out. Average Joes, average people all over the world for decades. And we're going to get into some stuff to suggest that this kind of questioning and these kind of experiences and these kind of documented accounts are at the very least written down in ancient literature as well, which truly blows my mind that it's what you would expect to see. We don't have to get into understanding what it is, who it is, all that. That's still a mystery. Okay. There's some great theories. I've got some great ideas on that. But let's try to stay away in this show, if you will. Let's try to keep curiosity alive. Let's try to study the subject objectively. It's okay to have your favorite ideas. I've got mine. I'm sure you've got yours. That's totally cool. But we are, as a human species right now in 2026, we're getting information from upper level sources that are suggesting that a lot of things that we have suspected in this research community for many decades are in fact true, or at least elements are true. We're probably going to get information to show that a lot of sacred cows and a lot of things that have come with the lore around this subject are probably bullshit. And if we really want to keep a curious mind and try to get to the understanding of this very complicated mystery, which we might not get to, even with all the disclosures that we might get or might not get. It's a process. It's a process of humanity understanding itself as well. I think that's what this subject is also very powerful, and that's why we're going to be starting off with some psychology to try to understand what drives people's main beliefs, the things people like about this, what they don't like about this. So I'm going to get into that a little bit, but just stay curious, stay open. I'm giving you my perspective. I don't represent anybody. I don't work for anybody. I work for you guys. I'm here just a guy in Canada that has loved this subject since I was a kid. Loved it. Fascinated by it. Mystery of mysteries. Top of the shelf curiosity for me. I do most of my podcasting outside of this realm because of how much I love it, you know? And now I want to like share. It's going to take me a while. We're going to share what I've got, and we're also going to get this new information. Who knows what it's going to validate? I'm open-minded. I just want to know the truth. I believe the truth is knowable, at least to a certain level. And so let's stay curious. Let's investigate open-mindedly. Let's refresh our memories as governments are going to start disclosing the information that I still believe they're not going to tell you the whole story. And I'll share why that is. And I don't necessarily believe it's just for some nefarious purpose, definitely elements of it. But there's other explanations for why they will so stubbornly hold on to the real D class, at least for now. Maybe it's a progression thing. We're getting told this is just the drop in the bucket. There's more to come. Who knows? Okay. But, and even if, see, this is the thing, this subject is so vast, so thoroughly documented, to at least be something worth considering, that even if this current Trump administration release of information that we've never seen any of the other administrations do, but even if every single part was fabricated, manufactured for some hoax, outside of that, the public domain, meaning average sleuths, researchers, people who've had experiences, there's a tapestry of information that the average person can look to if for some reason you still just naturally have a knee-jerk reaction, understandably, of doubting anything the government's going to tell you about this. You have independent scholarship already done to at least keep you curious. That's it. That's the best I can really present. I don't have smoking guns, but I've got some very interesting information. Okay. So just make sure everything's running smoothly before we continue. We should be live across the board. And yeah, we are. I just want to say hello to everybody tuning in. Give me a quick hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I got small numbers right now. Yeah, it's a Friday afternoon. Everybody's probably still at work, but hopefully in the archive, even in the archive, I'll check some of the comments. Make sure you say hello to me there. So let's go through this. Actually, let's do this first. I had a few videos I wanted to show you. I want to tell you my story. That's the place to go. Okay. I'll tell you my story with this really quickly, give you a little background. Some people have been following my work. I've been mainly focusing for the last many years on the corruption in the medical world, pharma, with my cult of the medics, getting into the history of cults and, you know, religious subjects, analyzing religion, dogmatism, these kind of things, getting into what's going on in the political world, the geopolitics, the nature of totalism or totalitarianism, the many branches of it. I do a kind of a mixed bag, and I primarily focused my shows on those subjects because they're very immediate. They're happening, right in front of our eyes. I'm also in my 40s now with kids and mortgages and taxes. So it's very relevant to me what's going on in those arenas, which is why I focus a lot on that. But deep down, I am not a political commentator. Deep down, I am a student of the mysteries of life, starting with the biggest mystery of all. Who am I? How did I get here? What is this place? Who runs it? What's the truth about our history? What's my purpose in life? These are the questions that motivated and shaped me. They still do to this day. I love those questions. I don't expect them all to be answered in my lifetime, but I'm going to try to get as damn close as possible before I exit the stage here. Okay. So that's kind of what motivates me, is just a deep, intense curiosity about the nature of reality and the nature of mystery. I love mysteries. And yeah, you could accuse someone like me of preferring things to be mysterious and unexplained because I love that. But that's never been how I felt about my curiosity with these kind of subjects, these fringe subjects or out of the box subjects like UFOs and aliens and things like that, or spiritual dimensions. This is something that I had my own natural progression with. And as far back as I can remember, I was just fascinated with a very simple concept, very simple idea. Anytime I talk about this subject, I bring this element in, which is that it made sense to me. Okay. That not that every single story we've heard, not that every theory you get put out there about all this stuff is true or accurate. All right. There's a lot of bullshit in this arena. I think we can all agree. I would be as confident as saying probably a good 80 to 90% of what is now called the UFO research community, or the, whatever. I think a lot of it is exaggerated. It's fantasy mixed with facts that people are forcing together. There's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of hoaxers. There's a lot of people that are just in this for attention, for money, for clicks. Okay. So because we're living in the human condition, all the mysterious subjects are immediately turned into big giant circuses. Not because the subject or the content of the subject or the theories around the subject are the circus, but just because human beings do this to everything. It's what we do. If we don't understand something, we piss on it. We destroy it. We tear it apart, remake it into something that's more comfortable and preferable. There's also a lot of mentally unwell people that are on all kinds of drugs and medications and borderline suicidal, et cetera, that are regarded as the biggest icons of research in this field, which is sad, but not everybody. See, I've been in this for a long time and I've spoken to pretty much everybody, absent a few. And I've spoken to people who I have deep respect for because I just feel like they are very genuine. They are articulate. They are serious. They have that curiosity. They're motivated by the truth. They're not swindled into bullshit very easily. We could all fall for little bits here and there because, when you're looking for it and you're curious for it, there are some very well-crafted red herrings out there. Okay. I've fallen for them. We've all fallen for them. But that doesn't take away from the general premise here of the question that I was talking about that got me into this when I was a kid, which is I remember finding out when I was very young that I grew up in Canada. Okay. I was born in Alberta. When I was 2 years old, moved to London, Ontario. So my formative years were in London, Ontario, then went to Saskatchewan, then back to Ontario, then now I'm out in BC. So I've been all over the country. And when I was a very young kid and I found out about other countries existing with other people, and then I was raised in traditional Pentecostal Christianity and found out, oh, there's other types of Christianity that all disagree with this type of Christianity. And there's Catholicism and Protestantism and Mormonism and JW and all these different variations. And then there's other religions that all have their little sects and disagreements within their religious camp. And then it just keeps going. And there's different cultures, and there's still primitive cultures. There's still cultures that live in tribal settings living in the world. Meanwhile, here we are, with modern civilization. And so these were the things that as I started learning as a kid, it just got me curious about, well, what's the next layer? What's the next layer? How does this keep expanding out? If I, as a young kid, you first of all, your parents, your mother is your universe, your father is the next universe, and that's it. There's nothing else. And then you learn, oh, there's other people in the world. Oh, there's a big wide world. Oh my God. And you just keep expanding out and finding out where you are. As I was going through that process, as we all do, get to this point where you go, so I just went from a state of not understanding that there's other versions of everything I'm being told. There's other people, there's other traditions, there's other cultures, there's other religions, there's other philosophies, there's other ideas. You can't help but keep expanding that and go, well, what if there's other planets? What if there's like if there's other countries that we didn't yet know about during the great era of exploration? And then when advanced societies with technological advancement to build big ships that could travel and go and seek out the new world or whatever, start making contact with tribes that had never even seen ships like that or people like that before. It would have been very much like if aliens had landed and said, hey, take me to your leader, right? I mean, just imagine that time before electricity, before the internet, before phones, before any kind of communication grid, radios. People are living in their own little world, believing they're the only ones, believing their culture is the dominant one, only to find out as exploration continues and technology advances and we keep running into different groups and tribes all over the place, that, oh, wow, it's a big wide world out there. And then you think about the discoveries even in the ocean or all over the life, from the life of plants, the life of insects, the life of birds, the life of reptiles and mammals and all the different forms of life, and then the forms of life that live under the ocean. They're still finding creatures living under the ocean that look more alien than any of the aliens we've ever been shown by Hollywood. And yet there they are. We didn't even know they existed for thousands of years, and we just discover them like yesterday. This happens all the time. New discoveries of new creatures that we didn't even know existed, that were once myth and legend, are being uncovered and discovered all the time. Just look even in the history of discovery of the panda bear. That was a good one Lloyd Pye used to bring up. So, you put all this stuff together and you go, all right, well, are we alone in the universe? It starts there. Is there a universe? Okay, let's accept that there is. Are we alone in it? Seems like a big waste of space if we are. Seems weird that we would be an anomaly like that. The conditions for life could happen just as conditions for life happened in other areas of our own planet that we didn't know about until we made contact with them, or they made contact with us. The same thing could happen off planet with other planets. Like, it's just simple reasoning here. And so when I go around and I'm young and I'm kind of naive, I'm in my late teens, early 20s, and I start finding, oh, wow, there's an entire field of research about these UFOs that are flying around. And they've been going back, black and white photos, videos, people writing in journals, people who are surveyors and people that are sailing the seas, people that are in the military start talking about their accounts. We're going to get into some of them. And I come across this and I go, oh man, it's not just a Saturday morning cartoon. Like there's actually real stuff going on that's inexplicable. Much of it, yes, can be explained after further analysis, but there's so much that just can't be. Defies imagination, defies laws of physics, defies the traditional rules that we believe are in effect at all times. Then I start finding out, oh, these kind of stories about meeting advanced intelligence or seeing these craft that are doing things that none of our conventional aircraft or even military aircraft are capable of doing, and that these are documented at least over the last 60, 70 years. And then you just keep going and you realize, wow, there's some interesting descriptions even in the mythological record from all over the world that talk about similar experiences, described, of course, in the language of the time. Got to keep everything in context of the time in which things are written, right? Even when you go back to UFO cases in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you got the context of the time. What was the dominant belief system in society at that time? What's the difference in the accounts in Russia as opposed to Latin America, as opposed to North America, as opposed to Europe, right? Like, is there similarities? Is there patterns? Is there differences? And suddenly you realize this isn't just an easy subject to walk away from. You can't just walk away from it. If I talk to academic people, educated, intellectuals, they'll tell me, oh, that's just a bunch of hogwash and poppycock constructed by people who are just trying to find meaning in their lives. Right. Man, I'll bet you there's a lot of that. I'll admit it. However, what about that logical, phenomenological observation of here I am, born mysteriously into this world, whatever it is. I'm completely ignorant of its history, completely ignorant of how it came into being. There's a bunch of kiosks in a mall that you walk up to find out, like just metaphorically, where all these different kiosks are selling you a different explanation for the mystery of living on Earth as a human. And I observe, wow, there's other stars and planets. I've seen them myself. I've been going to observatories and hanging out with astronomy nerds for my entire life, getting this kind of information. And going, yeah, like there's a big, vast universe out there. And it just strikes me as a bit odd that everybody has a big problem. Just even taking it out of the realm, not that everybody has to adopt everything in this field, but just taking it out of the realm of, oh, it's just pure craziness. It's all just a psyop hoax and it's crazy. It's insane, schizophrenic. Like the level of cope that comes out of people when you bring this up. I'm like, I've always been baffled by that since the first time it happened to me. Because I'm sitting there going, I'm just genuine. I'm just curious. Like, don't you want to know? I even talk to people in my family that they believe me. They think, yeah, there's something to it, but they don't want to talk about it. I'm like, why don't you want to talk about it? It disturbs me. I'm like, why? It's friggin' amazing. It's the coolest subject ever. It's the most mind expanding thing. And they're like, yeah, that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. So you go, wow, why are people so allergic to mind expanding, curious mysteries? Well, humans like to know the answer. Mystery invokes some sort of anxiety in people. It never did with me. I was always like, life is already a bloody mystery. I don't know. Death is a mystery. Like, what? We're living in nothing but mystery, pretending like we've got it all figured out. And then paranormal phenomena that shouldn't be happening starts happening and is thoroughly documented. Like I said, different periods of time, people who they don't even speak the same language. They're not even in the same era. And they're all telling you the same basic description of events that shouldn't be happening, given the explanations from both the religious dogmatists or the materialist Darwinians. And we're not curious anymore. Science isn't curious anymore. They've just been, not all, but it seems to be in the establishment. If any of these guys go on a podcast, I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. That's a little, there is no evidence. And then in the dogmatist camp, it's just look at the ancient book and that's it. And let's not get into the idea of where the words and terms come from or even what these people were observing. Let's not get into it any more than what we read on the surface, right? Let's not dare challenge what the priesthoods and the translators and the mythmongers have passed us What shards have been left, what shards have been retracted, what has been misunderstood, misinterpreted, completely left out. Let's not get into that, right? Let's let's get a firm answer and stay with it and never let it get questioned. And then the government backs it up by going, yeah, we don't have any evidence. We're not going to let anybody know what we've been seeing, even though we've got it documented on radar. And we've got trained military observers for decades telling you, holy shit, Captain, I'm seeing something that shouldn't exist. And it's shutting off our nukes and it's flying over these bases and we're coming out of the oceans and circling us and then going back into the oceans. Like I could sit here for like a week straight, 24 hours reading you all the stuff. So at least go, is every single account, every single image, every single video, every single whistleblower, every single tale from ancient times till now, is it 100% bollocks? That would be even a mystery worth trying to solve as well. Just that, how that's even possible to get the entire human race in on this hoax. That's what you'd have to do. So it's just a mystery within a mystery. But let me tell you a little bit further on in my story here, and we'll get through this and then we'll get into all the details. So maybe people who've been following me for a bit have no idea where I've come from, but in 2014 and 2015, my friend Chris Rusak and I was living in Toronto at the time, and we were super into this subject. And we were going to a friend of ours, Patrick. His name was Patrick. He ran a book downtown Toronto called Conspiracy Culture, and I was in there all the time getting books. Like my library is full of books from that bookstore, and I would go and haunt all these used bookstores and alternative, esoteric, paranormal bookstores, and I would find I just have a gem of collections on this stuff, right? And we would go, and there was also authors that would come in and do live talks at the bookstore, and I will always look to see if there was any of those kind of events, or any kind of UFO event where they'd have speakers come in and talk about it, right? And I was there. Well, I watched the 2001 disclosure thing with Stephen Greer. I think I saw that in like 2002, and then went to some live events and just talking to people. And I've been humming and drumming around in the background of this field for a long time. And then in 2015, Chris and I decided to do a cross Canada tour. It was actually 2014. We started it with something called the Modern Knowledge Tour. Shout out to all my modern knowledge peeps. This was what I cut my teeth in when it came to putting on events and realizing that running events circuits like that in a country like Canada you're not going to make any money. We should have done it in the States, sadly. But anyways, we wanted to do it in Canada. We did have some phenomenal cities that really showed up and sold out. And then others, there's like 10 people, it's a tough environment up here. But Canadians have always been curious about this. Actually, everyone I've spoken to, no matter where I've traveled, is curious about this. I've even spoken to people that don't speak English, and when you start saying UFO and ET, they have a lot to tell you. They know someone that knows someone. You right now know someone that knows someone that had some kind of weird experience with this, or has been that person in your family that was into it, you know? So it's so big. So we went, well, let's do this tour. And we got together a roster of both Canadian and American scholars or researchers on this. We had the late Paul Hellyer, former Defense Minister of Canada. He was Deputy Prime Minister under Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He had a lot to say about the banking stuff and what happened to Canada on the banking front. But again, we're not going to do the politics thing today. I've already done that to death. We all know it's a big scam. But he had a lot also to say about this subject. And he was the first ranking minister from a G8 country that came out officially. And I'm trying to remember the date. I think this would have been about 16, 17 years ago now, where he came out officially and made an announcement that he was briefed and is aware, with his connections and the information he's been looking at, that the Canadian government and the US government have the information to demonstrate that UFOs, as he said, are as real as the planes flying over your head. That they're not fictitious, they're not imaginary, they're not mirages, they're not psychedelic experiences. Some of them might be, but he's like, there's real shit flying around in the sky that's beyond any of the capabilities of our modern military aircraft. And I got to interview him. I got to do a book tour with Paul Hellyer. I got to have many private conversations with the man before he passed away. He was late 90s or mid to late 90s when he passed away. I went and picked him up from the Victoria airport, met him and his wife. So I had some good connections with him. So we had him speaking at that 2015. We call it the Disclosure Tour. We brought Stephen Bassett in because we have to bring him in to he's been doing this a long time. He's made a lot of radical predictions that didn't come true, but whatever. He came in. We also had the late great Stanton Friedman, Canadian nuclear physicist, that came to our Fredericton stop in New Brunswick. We got to have lunch with him and his wife. I got to meet him, talk with him. He did a really awesome presentation. I still have the full recording of it. We had Richard Dolan, always one of my favorites when it comes to the historians of this subject. He's got all the data. He's got all the stories. And it was talking to Richard. See, we actually went across Canada twice with Richard. He was part of the original Modern Knowledge Tour in 2014, as well as he jumped on the UFO Disclosure Tour, where that one we didn't do the driving across the country camping kind of experience, which was super fun. The Disclosure Tour, we just flew to the stops, brought the guys in, they did their presentations, and then we went home. And so I have a couple things from that I want to share with you. And it actually made CTV News back in the day, if you can believe it. The media actually covered it. But I remember some of those events. Calgary event was massive. The Vancouver event was massive. Ottawa event was really big. Montreal was packed. Montreal loves this kind of stuff. And while we were doing that event, I was in charge of being in the background and also getting testimony from people. So I was picking up stories of Canadians, average Canadians, that were telling me what they had seen and experienced. They had seen and experienced in their own lives. And I got pretty good because I literally talked to hundreds of people that lined up every stop, and I would look for gems. I'd look for like what were, in my opinion, the most credible sounding, from my limited I don't have any expertise on that, but just get an eye for someone that's genuine versus someone that's just trying to seek attention or who's just like batshit crazy. You kind of have to see that, right? You have to have a good gauge for that. And so I was collecting a lot of the stories, the eyewitness stories of people, just average people across Canada that have experienced this. And we did a whole thing on the Shag Harbor incident in New Brunswick. I got to meet the guys that actually wrote the book on it, were part of the investigations, were part of getting the FOIA request to get all the RCMP diver data from the Shag Harbor incident. We went and had lunch with them. We had them speak at our event. It was so fun. It was like, I have nothing but golden memories from this time in my life. It was just, we were the detectives on the case, going across the country, getting all the stories. And we did our best to try to advertise it and get it out there and get people in there. And, it was, you'd say when it comes to a successful tour, it was successful in terms of we got the right guys. We did have a lot of people show up. We got some great, footage and whatnot, but it wasn't this like smashing, overwhelming viral success or anything like that. It's just, like I said, Canada's such a big country, and yeah, it is what it is. But I thought it was a success personally because of the information I was able to get exposed to, the experiences I was able to have that are now direct experiences in my life that have helped shape me. So I wanted to give you that background. And then it was from that tour that it wasn't long after that I got an email from Prometheus Entertainment, which they make all the shows for History Channel, like Ancient Aliens, Curse of Oak Island, Unexplained. And they brought me in, and I did a series of interviews with them. And then they brought me onto the show, and I started doing that. And then, did that for a number of years. And then the pandemic locked me out of going back, and I haven't been back since. And I'm totally fine with that, because once again, doing that work in television, seeing how they chop everything up, mince everything up, and then you don't really get to tell your whole story. But at the same time, I think they did some good with the interviews they did with me, and I was able to get some of my ideas out there. Other times I'm like, oh my God, they're making me sound like I'm saying something I'm not. It's just the way it is, right, in Hollywood. So, anyways, it was a life experience that at least I'm glad I got to have, talking about more of the ancient side, the mystery of the ancient alien concepts and some of that. And then, of course, I've been doing the Unslaved podcast with Michael Tsarian for over a decade. And some of our earliest work was getting into his book on Atlantis and alien visitation, genetic manipulation, which is his compendium of going through the myths and legends, not just stopping at places where like Zachariah Sitchin and some of these other guys were looking into the more Eastern and Egyptian lore, from the Sumer and Egypt and that. Michael looked at that and was like, yeah, that's amazing. He said, but the world doesn't know about the Celtic record, the Irish record, the Western record of this, which is incredible. It's where you get a lot of your movies. They based a lot of the movies on this subject on those Irish myths and legends, combined with what we get from Egypt, Mesopotamia, etc. So I was always into that. That was always fascinating. I'm like, man, there's this whole history of stories. Like I've got a few here I'm going to show you in a minute that are really interesting. And so fast forward, I've collected from I've interviewed like Jordan Maxwell, Jim Mars. I've interviewed Grant Cameron from Winnipeg. He was one of the Canadian historians on the subject. He's got lots of interesting stuff. Uh, Stanton Friedman, like I said, Paul Hellier, and many, many others, right? Richard Dolan. I spent night after night around a campfire with Richard Dolan, and we would just talk about this stuff. And, he's a smart guy and he's got lots of data and good theories. And I always found he did a really good job of just being a documenter, a chronicler of the subject. And then he'll make, what I liked about Richard was he would give a differential between his theory about it and some other theories. So he came at it more academically. Remember, he was supposed to be a historian. He came into the subject of UFOs by studying American history. And then it went from there. And he told me, and he would say this. I remember we were in Halifax. We were trying to advertise at one of the markets for our upcoming event the next day. Every time we would go to a stop, we'd go a day early and we'd get in there and try to like go to some of the festivals and say, hey, you guys should come and check out this UFO event we're going to do tomorrow. And so we'd be there and people all come up all challenging, like, oh, you guys are into UFOs, And the way Richard would just be so like, yeah, we're a little different, us guys. But he's like, but let me just ask you this. And he would just do a good job of kind of getting past those like immediate defensive reactions you get from people who are mostly just performing in front of their friends so they don't look crazy. And he would just immediately disarm them and they'd start having conversations, be like, you know what? It's kind of funny. I remember this one time I did see this thing, or my friend saw this, or my uncle, when he was fishing, he saw something like, and it was so fun to watch that dynamic. I learned a lot by just being a part of that tour and just watching how people reacted in public with their friends versus one-on-one around a campfire or after an event, where it's almost like permission has been granted for you to speak openly about this. And then suddenly people have got all kinds of shit to talk about. I thought that was really interesting, that a lot of people are out there performing because they're terrified of social ostracization of their friends, losing their jobs or whatever, called crazy, because that's the climate that I grew up in around this subject. Now, young people tuning in to this, welcome. I'm giving you the background because you're actually being raised in a time where it is more favorable to speak about the subject than when I came up. So we've been through a lot to get to this day. And that's what I'm trying to say to people is everybody's up there immediately knee-jerk reaction. This is all bullshit. It's Project Bluebeam. Maybe, but don't forget, there's been those of us who've already kind of done this 1,000 times over. We've got it all documented. And to get to this day took decades of pulling teeth, just so you know. So be grateful for what you get, even if it's not the whole thing. And also remember, we don't need the government. I would like it to happen so we could settle it, but I don't even mind if this subject stays shrouded in mystery. I don't think the vast majority of people out there really want to know. I mean, people say they do. They say they do. But maybe it is a product of me getting a little more jaded as I age. Maybe COVID gave me PTSD and a loss of faith in humanity that I'll never get back. I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of all of that, even though I'm eternally optimistic overall. But needless to say, I'm not impressed by the vast majority of information, the way it's shared when it comes to what the current state of what we call the alternative research community is. It is, guys, I'm just, you might like some of it, you might not. I don't care. I'm here to tell you, when I came up in this in the early 2000s, and even before that, growing up in the 80s and 90s, listening to the what I could on that and watching the shows and the little broadcasts you could get on it, we are a far cry from where we were, in terms of just how people interpret this subject. It's a mixed bag, but it's night and day. And I think the internet has been a blessing and a curse in this regard. Because on the internet, yeah, you can get access to all these archival libraries and all the information, but you also get access to a lot of batshit crazy people, or people with an agenda, or people that are misinformed but are acting all confident. And that's informing everybody's opinion. And I think everybody's just confused. And then, yes, you do have this shadowy aspect that has been purposely blocking this from being delivered from the government. And then the laughing of the jiding and or the jiding, the deriding, the derision, the mocking that you get from the media. Only recently has the media changed their tone slightly. They would even, I remember, like when we were doing it, I got on a call with a local media representative from CTV when I was in the RV and we were driving and we're telling them what this disclosure tour is all about. I'll never forget, and I had it on speakerphone when I was doing this. So imagine us, we're driving in an RV. I'm sitting there with like Richard Dolan, Michael Tellinger. Who else was in there? We had it was just a whole bunch of us. We started like collecting people as we were driving across the country. And this was more on the Modern Knowledge tour, but Modern Knowledge, we also spoke about the UFO subject because we did bring Richard Dolan. We had like Carrie Cassidy come. We brought everybody in, right? Just a variety of views. Most of them don't agree with each other, and that's what I love. You get them all in a room, and they're all kind of like looking at each other, and like it's this like territory competition. But I was trying to stay objective and just go, okay, who's got good gems here, right? But anyways, I'm on this call, and the media rep is trying to get, the journalist or whatever is trying to get some kind of story on our event. And the level of prickliness and just this like this smugness with this little smile kind of vibe from this reporter was just palpable. So I absolutely went scorched earth on this reporter. I don't even know if the reporter ended up printing anything. But we did end up getting Richard Dolan on a few really popular podcasts in Canada. So, and I was glad he did a good job on that. So anyways, the media has never been kind to this subject, and they would play like X-Files music as they would show, oh, look at this group of guys talking. They got some Americans in here talking about UFOs. Ooh, like the way they do it just to make it look ridiculous. And I'm just like, okay. And that's why, like in the background, the general population around this subject has been getting a variety of very negative vibes around it for a long time, subliminally, subconsciously, shaping opinion. People don't even notice. People say, I have a strong opinion. I'm like, yeah, where'd you get it? Is it yours? Did you do the deep research? Do you have the curiosity to really come to a conclusion that you could say is yours? Or was it massaged into your brain and you selected it out of a bunch of other options just because it was a preference? What is it, right? And this is why this subject just brings a whole bunch of baggage with it. So there you go. I've been a student or a fond explorer of this subject for a long time. I still love it. I don't have any conclusive ideas on it. I'm totally fine if remains a mystery. But deep down, I'm just like you. I want to know the truth, and I want to know what's known. I am not asking too much here. I am not asking for disclosure on information and truth that is not currently available to humanity. I'm not asking for that. If we're not ready yet at this stage of our evolution as a species or in our journey of consciousness, if we're not ready yet, cool. I get it. I'm not trying to violate that. But if something's known by either governments, militaries, intelligence agencies, private groups about this, that they're hiding from the human race, that they are hiding from the human race, that humans are hiding from other humans, I want to know that shit. What do you think? You want to know? Look, we already got someone. Then you should know. This is it. You should know, Dave, that stars and planets do not look, all caps, like they say they are plasma energy balls. Hey, cool. Maybe not. Maybe we don't know. But, careful with Eddie Bravo. All right. Anyways, so, and this is again where you're going to see it. Just watch the comments on this show, and and you just, even if you're not excited about this subject the way I am, and you would rather picture Earth as living in a closed set and we're the only special ones ever created, and everything else is just a lie, and you want to go there, just watch the comments to understand what I'm trying to tell you here. That there is a knee-jerk reaction to this subject. I think I might have an idea of what it might be. I might be completely wrong, but we'll see. We'll see. Before I get into the fascinating journey of human psychology about this, let's just quickly, I want to do a little blast from the past here. You'll get to see a younger version of me. Let's go and pull it up here 1 sec. I'll make this bigger. Okay. This is me and Chris. We're in a hotel room watching CTV News cover the event we just did the day before I believe this was in Calgary. So check this out.
Well, there might be a commercial though.
CTV covering UFOs. Man, it looked like a baby.
Canadian defense ministers in our city for a discussion that's out of this world.
We're talking UFOs, the details of what's being discussed next.
Oh, it's going to go to a commercial.
Oh, damn, the YouTube commercial.
A lot of people believe the world's governments are covering up the existence of UFOs.
And about 400 of them gathered at the University of Calgary today for the Disclosure Canada tour. The Disclosure Tour aims to build a wave of support to have governments release all the information they have about UFOs. The keynote speaker was former Canadian Defence Minister Paul Hellyer. Hellyer first spoke openly about his belief that governments are covering up an alien presence back in 2005, saying UFOs are as plentiful in our skies as airplanes.
Much of the media won't touch it, and so you just have to keep working away and hope that someday you've got a critical mass, and they will say by one means or another, Mr. President or Mr. Prime Minister, we want the truth, and we want it now because it affects our lives.
Hellyer also believes aliens are living among us here on Earth, and that governments are covering up the truth out of fear for the world's military and industrial systems. Hellyer was defense minister from 1963 to 1967. So, do you believe, guys?
Well, it clears up some questions that a lot of people have about some of our coworkers.
See,
Right.
here's the joke.
It's just
Number
all
one.
funny in games.
Why are you looking at me?
Cut to the
You've
weather
always
guy and
been a
talk
little
about
bit off,
chemtrails.
Yeah.
you know?
And let's avoid the
Just
money
because
mafia at
weather
all
doesn't
costs.
always work out.
Ah, the weather!
And they do. It's so funny. I was just joking with Chris. I'm like, oh, they're going to cut to the weather or something. They literally cut to the weather. Now, in other news, it's raining today in Edmonton. Okay. So, like, isn't that how this goes? You're like, let's talk about one of the most mysterious subjects ever. We've got a former defense minister at Calgary University talking openly about it. He may know a thing or two. Let's not make it serious at all. And let's immediately just flip to the weather. Like, that is the way our brains have been treated to talk about it. And when you know what you're looking at and you talk to the average person, the sort of normie brain about this, that's how they operate in the conversation, changing the subject, want to move away from it. And I went, what's with the evasion? Like, why is this so disturbing to people? Now, I have some ideas. I mean, we've also been raised on Hollywood training us in one sense, maybe even a lot of films. I believe a lot of films and movies are probably disclosing stuff. These producers, trust me, have massive libraries of information. A lot of them work with intelligence. A lot of them know certain things. And so they put information out in film. Some of it's propaganda, some of it's disinformation, some of it is just straight up info that they say, you know, we don't mind it passing through the right brain, but don't you ever let it pass through the left brain with like actual documented information about the subject. Let's keep it in the world of the imagination, and that way we can constantly brush it under the rug when anybody has anything serious to say about the subject. So they don't want to have any serious discussions with serious people, serious data, serious evidence. That's the environment of media that we all grew up in about this. And I believe that's why we have a completely mind-controlled population that is a hurdle, that if there were forces in government or in the powers that be that were like, it's time, then, and even forget about the origin of it, whether you think it's aliens or demons or time travelers or back engineered technology or whatever the explanation that you prefer for it is, you can't deny there's a phenomena that's real. That's where I think we could all hopefully agree that there's at least enough information put together over the years and now added to by these D classes that there's a phenomena happening that is not conventionally explained. And we're going to, peel the layers back and hopefully get to the bottom of it. Now there's another, I'll save that one for later. So Paul Hellyer did an interview. Well, actually, I think it's good I do this one. This one, how long is this one? This one is, okay, it's 3 minutes. We can take 3 minutes. Paul Hellyer is going to just share a little story he had about the Bentwaters case. And I have a little story about this interview. Okay, so this isn't the original channel, but this is a clip from an interview that my friend Chris Rusak actually did with Paul Hellyer in his apartment downtown Toronto by the harbor. That's why there's a harbor plane going by in the beginning of it. And they went through a whole bunch of things. It was kind of like Paul's last will and testament with all these subjects. And then a few years later, he sadly passed away. So he's speaking about this particular case, and I think it's relevant here. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
There are a couple of outstanding cases, like the Bentwaters case in the UK, which has been so well documented that nobody in there with any kind of intelligence whatsoever could read the latest book by Colonel Halt on that episode without coming to the conclusion that it was legitimate. And he was one of the first, he was, as a matter of fact, the first person that I ever interviewed live on this subject. I was in Washington for the National Prayer Breakfast, and after it was over, I went to see him, and the only reason he would see me is because I had stopped in London the previous year on my way to the Middle East to see what was going on there, which I recount in my book, Light at the End of the Tunnel. And I wanted to have seen and talked to people firsthand before putting it in the book, which is the way I try to operate. And so I went that way and talked to the person who had been in charge of the British Armed Forces UFO desk. And he gave me this case because it had gotten into the public domain. And so as a result of that, Colonel Hall said that on his recommendation that he would see me. So I talked to him on tape for 2 hours and put a lot of it in my book because it just covered all the bases of the incredulity. Oh, don't give me that sort of thing. When a reporter comes in, stop kidding me. Stop wasting my time. And then finally, on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, I think it was Christmas Eve, when the sightings happened again, and they were having a banquet to give up some awards to members of the staff at the twin bases there. His CO sent him out to investigate. And he said his attitude was, I'm going out there and put an end to this nonsense once and for all. Instead of doing that, he said, it changed my life forever. He actually saw the ships. He saw the evidence of them being there, recorded it, and then after that went through this whole realm of people destroying evidence, lying about what had happened, and all of that sort of thing. And his book, which is about that thick, records his memories and is worth reading if you just want a single case to get at the truth of that. As I say, one of the best documented cases there is.
So according to him, one of the best documented cases that there is, there's actually a bunch of very well documented cases. In fact, when we were in, I think this was at Ottawa. No, this was in Montreal. We were in Montreal and an audience member from Nova Scotia, from Halifax, popped up and asked Paul Hellyer to share what he knew about the Shag Harbor incident. He's like, you got any information about the Shag Harbor incident? And Paul went on like a 15-minute rant about the Shag Harbor incident in terms of how well documented it is. In fact, he made the claim, and others have as well, that the Shag Harbor incident has more declassified official data to go with it than the Roswell incident did. Right? And hopefully that changes. Hopefully it all comes out. But I thought that was interesting. Canada's had a few of its own very interesting cases. I've even been to some of the UFO watch groups here in Canada. Some of them are crazy. Some of them have some very interesting people involved. You know, who knows? But just want to say, answer this question coming from Dead Star Cave Girl. Interesting name, by the way. Saying, why are people waiting for disclosure from government when they have only ever lied about everything? And I understand that. And that's why I was saying we could be seeing a change in that. There could be a reason for it. You don't have to believe that governments are going to change on this subject, okay? They're going to start telling you what they know. This is what we call disclosure, which we've been talking about forever. Is this real? Is it fictitious? Are they smoke mirroring it? Like, just leave that aside for a minute. We don't need them. I just find this is another moment in history when this information is coming out from a unique administration that America has never seen before. Because all the information that's been dropped today was held by all the previous administrations. So regardless, maybe there's even, I mean, how about this? This is a good time for me to share a theory that I ran by all these UFO guys, okay? And I was mostly rejected, but I've held to it as at least I think it's a good theory. And what happens when you plug this theory into the reason why it was held secret, the reason it's coming out now, or at least allegedly coming out now, and the reason you also don't have to rely on government sources to get at the bulk of this information. You can still get enough information to conclude there's definitely something going on here. This is not just smoke and mirrors. There's just too much from different timelines, from different eras, from different people that speak different languages, from trained observers, documented through time, through all of time, especially when we've got, 19th century onwards, 20th century onwards, up to the moment that we're in right now, where we have more capability of documenting these things. Now, the other issue is that we have this problem where because of the advanced level of CGI and AI and everything else, that it can muddy the pot. But the issue is that most people think in a binary. It's either or for everything. All of everything the government has ever said and done is a lie. All of everything that has to do with UFOs and ETs must be a hoax and must be a lie. Or every single thing we've ever heard from the government was totally on the up and up. They would never lie. Or every single UFO case and contactee experience and abductee experience ever recorded is true. Like, you see how there's two extremes there? You got to be more nuanced about it and just try to figure it out. But anyways, that's that. My theory, this theory it's not mine, I mean, other people have thought of this too, is what if humans and governments are not in charge of the subject? They're not the ones determining whether this is coming out or not. Now, when I ran this by people like Stephen Bassett and some of these other guys, they were like, well, there's no evidence of that, because there's only evidence of these, whoever these others are and these craft are, that they are trying to make some kind of contact with Earth. And that it's just, and typically these guys come from the camp of like Stephen Greer, where they think that everything is positive with the subject. Like all these beings are just glowing angels that just mean well. Because of course, if they're an advanced civilization that has figured out star travel, they must have also developed morally in order to keep a civilization intact. I mean, it's not the most unlogical position to have, right? But you got to throw out all of the very negative experiences that people have had with whatever this is. The violation of freedom that has occurred. And so you realize, all right, just as humans look at all the other life on this earth, all the animals, all the flora and fauna, all the insects as lower life forms, we operate accordingly. We have whole industrial farms. We have testing of monkeys and dolphins and every freaking form of life you can imagine is under a microscope being spliced up and mixed with the DNA of something else. And then hybrids are being created and all this crazy shit's going on at DARPA. And, you know, just look at what human beings on planet Earth do to all other forms of life and even do to each other. If you want to get into my Cult of the Medics documentary series, you can get into the history of human experimentation. Just go watch chapter 4. It's one of the toughest ones. And just go, okay, again, it's that phenomenological thing that if it's happening here right now with what we've got, if we extrapolate that out to other life, other intelligent forms of life that might have achieved a high level of civilization, just like you see a mixed bag of good and evil, or some have called it service to self versus service to others, or, some of these beings, it's nothing personal. They just look at us as experimental lower life forms, the same way we look at lower life forms allegedly as being lower life forms on this planet, of being up for being experimented on. What do we do as humans? We abduct animals and creatures out of nature. We take it in, and before you know it, we're pinning butterflies onto boards and naming them and categorizing them and then dissecting them and studying them under microscopes. And like, it's beyond anal probing when it comes to what we do to animals for experimental. Just the cosmetic industry alone should prove my point. The beauty cosmetic industry has done more abduction, experimentation, evil alien type shit on other animals to produce makeup than it's probably comparable to what's being done to us if there is this whole scheme of there being more intelligent life forms or life forms that are able to remain hidden, right? So it's just, this isn't like, oh, I just gave you a bunch of evidence there. This is just use your logic. And then the other reason, so I'm plugging that in. I'm like, okay, we're already kind of doing this. So if maybe all we have to just recalculate is that we might not be the apex. Meaning in terms of we're not the head of the food chain. We're not developed fully yet. We're a species that A, suffers from historical amnesia, and B, is still in the developmental stages. Like, we're barely a teenager as a species. So if there's adult species and elderly species and more advanced species that have gone further, just a little bit further than our timeline in terms of development, they might come and go, ooh, resource-rich planet. Oh, and good, you got these species, this interesting humanoid species that has a mix of DNA. Maybe that DNA is valuable, just the way that Black Angus cows are valuable to us, or sheep are valuable to us, or whatever form of life. Reese monkeys for experimental vaccines, or whatever Pfizer's doing in those, like whatever they're doing, right? So it's not illogical. It's not insane. It's just a matter of just moving up a step, right? And with that, then comes, okay, what about technological superiority? If what we're seeing from like ancient Greek writings, Roman writings, There's some interesting pharaohs that have written about seeing flying shields and orbs in the sky and all this kind of stuff, going all the way through these different centuries, right up to the point where we're getting more clear descriptions of what these things are. We've got now videos, we've got radar, we've got all this stuff, right? Put it all together. Whatever this is far more advanced than us. How would a far more advanced civilization really see us? Would it be purely love, light, and benevolence? Or would it be opportunistic in the same way that if humans ever got off planet and found another planet with a developing species that was, say, at the level of maybe the Middle Ages or even like earlier than that in their development, just something comparable, what would we do to them? What have we done to tribes and less development societies throughout our own history with our own species? It's not rocket science. So this brings in the theory where I went, well, if these are the big dogs that have the ability to fly Vesica Pisces all over our nuclear test sites and outmaneuver the most advanced aircraft, where you got Navy pilots coming on going, look, I'm not supposed to talk about this, but we can't do any of this shit. We're not even close to be able to do what these things can do. And you go through all the stuff and you realize something's operating at a high, if we go with it, something was operating with a high level of technology that dwarfs us. Who's in control of the disclosure? Well, who's in control of the airspace? Who's in control of the whole bloody thing? Right? So that's where I went, all these guys knocking on the government's door to say, hey, why aren't you disclosing? Why aren't you disclosing? There's a few ways of explaining it. Okay. Really quickly, it's all nefarious and evil. We've got a bunch of Satanists running the world. They don't want us to know the truth, and they're keeping it all to themselves. And so the orders have come from the top high tables that say humanity shall not know this information. For whatever reason, we can we can speculate on that all day. Okay. So that's scenario one. The reason for keeping this hidden for so long is purely nefarious and evil. There's that, okay? Two, there's a real good reason that the militaries of the world decided not to tell us. And it has to do with our behavior as a group, basically a collectivized animal. Not an animal. I don't like calling us animals, but you know what I mean. Like, we behave. There's a setting in human beings that goes back to our tribal genetic memory of where we can become very easily collectivized and then controlled by intelligent forces via that instinctual collectivization. That's what we're experiencing on the political world right now. People are exploiting this. Okay. Well, who else is going to exploit that? So you have that factor, and you think, what if they realized, like, look at, do you remember the toilet paper shortage during COVID, the weeks it was announced? How when fear hits the human mind, it travels around faster than any virus ever could, or it's called the fire in the mind, and we're cooked, and we're immediately zombies. We don't think clearly. There's no spectral thinking. There's no rational thinking. There's no objective thinking. It's just fight or flight. Watch a Black Friday event happen. Look at the vast majority of people running around the streets howling at the moon right now because they're high as shit on drugs and God knows what. Look at the human condition. Look at the level of fighting. Look at the resistance to this subject from every category. I have more evidence that humanity doesn't want to know than that they do want to know. And what if the governments and the militaries who spent decades doing mind experimentation and psychological experimentation, yes, no doubt for some nefarious purposes, but also to learn about humanity, we have figured out that they figured out, at least the equation they put together, you can agree with it or disagree with it, they put the equation together that humanity is cognitively incapable of understanding the reality of this. It would shatter and would cause mass psychosis. It would melt down governments. It would melt down the religious institutions. It would melt down our society. We would be Mad Max. It would be over. That's their fear. That was always their fear. That's what's written. That's their testimony. I've spoken to guys on that at least present very compelling evidence that they're on the inside. These are ex-military or retired military or even active military who've said that's what it was. That's the reason, because that's what they were told the reason was. So number one, they're holding it back because they're just a bunch of assholes. They're evil and they don't want us to know. Number two, maybe there's a good reason they don't want us to know. And it's because we behave like panicked children and we will melt this place down and start eating each other if we find this shit out. That, I don't think that's true, but that's kind of the reasoning. And there's a lot of evidence that that could actually be the case if they did let it out. I've always been more optimistic about humanity and went, no, even if what was that old, who said it? Was it Schopenhauer or Nietzsche or someone that said, even if the truth shall kill them, let them die. The truth is the most important thing, right? I'm more on that camp. Okay. But I'm just giving you, these are sort of the explanations for classification. Third option. The real alphas in the room. The ones in control of the technology that we're scratching our heads about. The ones in control of the information that we're scratching our heads about. The more advanced civilization, if this is the case, whether you look at it as a physical visitation or a spiritual one, right? They command this. They are the ones telling the government, yeah, you can't do that shit. You can't tell anybody. And the government's like, but we really want to. They're petitioning us. We have to. We technically work for them. And they're like, if you do it, here's what happens. And then you can't do it. So that's kind of where I was like, that's an interesting theory as well. That imagine that's the case. Imagine the case has been that there has been maybe even all three of those scenarios going on. Maybe there's some way we could say that all three of those at some, because this is such an old thing now. It's not like this, like the governments of the world maybe found out yesterday that something might be real and now they're just trying to figure out how to tell us. They've been having this debate and this classification process about this subject for like decades. So that's why I wonder, no matter what we do, and this is why all the doubters and all the skeptics can just go, the reason they're not disclosing is because there's nothing to disclose. I guess that's the other explanation. It's all just swamp gas and misinterpreted aerial phenomena and, all this stuff. I've seen too much to believe that. I think the skeptics are off their, I think they're missing out on purpose. Maybe they don't want to know. But it is a valid theory. You could just hold true to that. You could just go, nope, there's nothing going on here, guys. It's all just boring and whatever. And, you could explain it away like that. But all I can say is from the research I've done, from the conversations I've had, from the experiences I've had a few of my own sightings. I've had a few of my own things. When I put my own life experience together and I sit here and I say, here's what I think for what it's worth, might be true, might not be true, might partially be true. I don't know. I don't think the government or any human agency is ultimately in charge of this subject. Because if they're not and I think another reason that you could add to they could say, oh, the psychology of the public mind is not ready for this, right? Try telling billions of Muslims that it's not what they thought. Try telling billions of Christians it's not what they thought. Try telling, even the billions of Darwinian evolutionists that never even considered some sort of intervention theory or the fact that we might not be alone. Try telling them this. Then try telling everybody that we actually lied to you for decades, which means if we now come out and tell the truth, that erodes trust in government like we're seeing right now. Nobody even trusts them when they do try. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Even if imagine they were trying to come out and tell us. And we're still going to be like, no, you guys are lying. And justifiably so, because of the track record of lying. So this is such a hard situation. Add to that, this other element of whoever this is might be the one in command saying, yeah, no, they're not ready. This isn't the time. You're not saying shit. We want to keep this Earth a nice farm for us, or whatever it is, like observation deck. And we don't want to ruffle the feathers. We don't want everybody knowing about us because it hampers our operations. I don't know. It's just an idea. Yeah. Yeah, the toilet paper stuff was sickening. But and I brought up that because it's like, look, that's what panic does. Fear is the mind killer. So let's get into the psychology. And this may piss some people off, but that's what, looking at deep truths can do. And what I was trying to think of here is, this is how you got to think as a detective, right? You have to have scenarios. You don't have to be married to any of them. You don't have to be committed to the theory. You don't have to be committed to the explanation. We can just observe, we can chronicle, we can surmise, we can stay curious, and we can investigate. And then hopefully the mystery eventually is revealed. But a good place to start is with psychology, because what my curiosity has always been is why, whether I'm talking to the dogmatist materialist or the dogmatist religionist, I get the same just shaking their head, smiling at me. You're full of shit. This is crazy. It's the craziest thing you've ever heard of in your life, that we're not alone, and whatever's out there might be interacting with our planet and might have a part of us even being where we're at. Like, those kind of things are just so insane. When I'm like, it seems perfectly logical, at least as a theory. Right? Like, before I get into the psychology, let me just rip out a few quick quotes for you from thinkers on this. Of course, you got Arthur C. Clarke, who said 2 possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not, and both are equally terrifying. I find that to be quite an epic statement. Think about it. No matter which way you look at it, both are equally terrifying. And fear is the mind killer, and so people pick the preferred amount and dose of fear that they can handle, and their theories and their worldviews and their opinions stem from that, and then off we go. And then when they look at all this, it's going to be interpreted on the base of what was the fear that motivated your belief. Which one? And then you got people like Nikola Tesla. He wrote this in How to Signal Mars in 1910. This is Nikola Tesla. This isn't some guy drinking Budweiser out in the swamp with a tinfoil hat on. He said, most certainly some planets are not inhabited, but others are. And among these, there must exist life under all conditions and phases of development. You could unpack that for the rest of the show. Just think about it. Most certainly, we got other planets. Okay. It's just, it stands to reason. Some are not inhabited. Some are. And among these that are, there's got to be life under different conditions, all kinds of conditions, and all different phases of development. Think about our own planet. Think about history of where technology started coming in, and bigger ideas, philosophy, architecture, agriculture, all these things started happening. In other areas, it just stayed dull. It did nothing really got developed until others who did develop it came in and said, hey, you can actually evolve past the wheel, and you can do this, and you have metallurgy and science and physics and all these things, right? So life exists under all conditions and phases of development on our own bloody planet, let alone other planets that might harbor life. So this is just to say, keep an open mind, bros. And then I always bring this up. It's my favorite one. It's what really made an impression on me, because I understand the people that come from the religious mind. I grew up in that mind. I studied that my whole life. I don't throw it all out. I just personally reinterpreted a lot of what we get from these ancient Bibles and texts and scriptures and Nag Hammadis and Mahabhatras and Old Testaments and all these things, right? Realizing that you're reading cryptic metaphors laid upon metaphors, told through story, told again through translation, then translational errors. It's a whole bag of stuff that you're reading, okay, when you read ancient texts. And even with the people that accept it on the dogmatic level, there's already a differential in the interpretation. So I went in and interpreted it a little bit different. And I went, all right, well, what if we reassess everything we read from that ancient literature? And maybe the ancient mind was trying to tell us something about this. It just didn't come across the way that our modern logical scientific brain is used to reading history, right? So there's that. So there's that whole study. I've done that forever in my work. Squirrel Nuts says, LOL, I'm out. Waste of time. Sorry. Okay. See you later, Squirrel Nuts. And I'm just thinking, what would be the reason that people are even afraid to speculate on these things? Does humanity suffer possibly from some sort of inferiority complex? It's just a question. I mean, I'm living in Canada right now, and it seems like Canadians, by and large, who've been propagandized since birth by the CBC and the government and the education system, mostly run by Marxist professors, have been brainwashed into thinking that they are superior to all the other countries. Meanwhile, look at our debt, look at our situation, right? And every group is always told, you're the best. I see it in the martial art world too. Oh, karate, we're the best. All those Jeet Kune Do guys are a bunch of losers, right? It's how it goes. It's a human thing, which means as a species, we sort of suffer from anything that rises above. Actually, the entire reason Marxism exists or collectivism on a political level exists and why people buy into that, even though it's been demonstrably debunked as a valid financial and political system. The reason philosophically they love it is because it's all about bringing down the people that are above your station to your level and leveling the playing field so that you can have that connection to feeling like you're worth something. That in order to feel like you're worth something, you have to compare yourself to people that have achieved more, have earned more, have done more, have invested more. And we need to stop them. We got to level them down because we got to slow that crab from climbing out of the bucket. The reason that is such a wildly popular theory and so many young people and even intellectuals bite down on it is because of an inferiority complex that is known and documented by psychologists from different languages, different times, right? And it's observable in just your daily life. If that is a thing that is maybe a blind spot or a developmental flaw or whatever you want to call it in the human mind, when we start looking at subjects like this and start imagining, wow, what if there's another planet or another star system or another dimension or another spiritual domain, pick your explanation for this, that is far more advanced than us, that is interacting with us. Nobody wants to hear that. If it was, oh, they're on par. We just saw like a 747 fly through, I don't know how they, or like a NASA like space probe that looks just like ours that came from a planet up the road. We could go, oh, okay, so there's other people like us. We could take them on. No big deal if there's a threat. Yeah. But something that's zipping around at like speeds that would just melt a pilot in our understanding of technology without those gravitational whatever's holding it together. We have to explain this and we have to go, wait, what if something's superior to us? The government's never going to tell you because they're supposed to be the mommy and daddy in the room that says, we've got everything figured out. We can protect you. We can defend you. We've got the most advanced technology. But what if they weren't able to say that? That might also explain why they didn't want to tell us, because it shows how inferior they are to whatever the hell this is. And then the average person in the intellectual world, in the scientific world, who sits on their degrees and their positions and their superior knowledge and talks down to everybody, right? The science gets to say, oh, it's hogwash, it's poppycock, it's all a bunch of conspiracy theory rambles. There's no way they could make it here. It violates the laws of physics. Because none of those big stuffy academics want to admit that their theories were wrong, that there is something superior to them that knows science beyond their comprehension or imagination. Then you go over to the religious dogmatists that would be like, nope, nope, this is just the way we've been told. We don't want to accept that we aren't the only special creation. So the idea of specialness and uniqueness is very rooted to what we need as children from our parents. And if the vast majority of humans walking didn't receive that, they're still walking around with a sort of inferiority complex. And so they come across a subject like this, they're just going to be like, imagining that there's something that's higher intelligence or more advanced interacting with Earth. I don't want to get into that. I'm going to go with the simple explanation for reality. And there's a boatload of those ready and waiting. So when you get to a position where you're trying to look at all this objectively and go, well, what if it's just as simple as, I don't know if you care about the language around it, whether we're talking interstellar, interdimensional, spiritual realms, kind of, it's all semantics to me. Something more advanced interacting with Earth that has extremely advanced capabilities, that's not something the vast majority of human beings want to swallow. That was the best way of me understanding why I kept running into people that didn't have that curiosity. And then I found many others that did. Many of you are like that. So it's an interesting thing, right? You can't, I guess the point of this little rant here is you can't negate the psychological side of this thing, of when it comes to this subject. The motivational drives as to where we're going, because that can skew the outcome. Don't you agree? If we know the observer effect on an experiment changes the result of the experiment, and we go with statements from and ideas from people like Anais Nin, who said, humans don't see things as they are, humans see them as we are. Like, we see things as we are. Well, if we are suffering from some of these psychological hangups, where now we are going and following preferences, not factual determinations based on logic and reason and evidence, then the conclusion, which is the belief system of the average person, is born out of that. So that skews the results. And then the vast majority of people walking around still can't get access to the full truth of it. So this is a huge thing that's part of this subject. So I made some notes here. I'm just going to go through some of them. So you have sort of the psychological drives behind dogmatic religionists rejecting extraterrestrial theories, or coming out with just the blanket statement that angels are just demons, right? And they're full right to have that theory, however you want it. Then we got to go, well, what do you define demon as? Oh, well, what does it say in the Bible? Oh, what does it mean? How many different types of translations in the original Hebrew and Aramaic were using that term and had multiple definitions for that term, right? Now, which one are we going to pick? And then, right? And then there's the lore, and then there's what you were shown in Sunday school about what that means. And like, we got to nitpick it apart in order to get to the bottom of that. But you can't even get through that conversation to do that with that kind of person. So how do you explain the immediate shutdown? When I say dogmatist, I'm not saying every religious person is a dogmatist. I'm saying the dogmatic mind that closes itself to any kind of new way of looking at what their preconceived beliefs were, right? So you'd have to get into existential psychology, which is kind of a branch between psychology and philosophy, and the sort of motivated cognition that is the result of your pre-generated worldview and self-view. Because we see the world through the way we see ourselves. And we humans hate threats to our sense of purpose and centrality. We perceive anything that's a threat. It's like a sibling. Like, I had it with my girls. Firstborn grows up to the age of 3. We are the parents. We are the gods of that young child until they grow up, right? That's how they perceive it. And then we end up having another kid. So that uniqueness and specialness that they first started with changes a little bit. And this produces a sibling rivalry with that new one, that new child that never really goes away. And there's a competition now for the affection and attention of specialness and uniqueness coming from the parents. Well, what's the parents of all humanity? What could this be something that's systemic throughout all of us that is a block to being able to see the full picture? That's the question. So the need for uniqueness and specialness is a real psychological motive for all walking human beings. You, me, everybody. We all want to know we're special. We want someone bigger than us to tell us we're special, that we're unique. And the deep thing is, I actually think we're special and unique, even if we live in a vastly populated universe. I'll get back to that other quote in a second to give you that at least as a background. But just something to chew on for a second. I know it's hard. It's a cold shower. It's a tough subject, but I'm trying to explain the reason you're seeing the reactions to this kind of information. We could even just put aside for a second what's true about this information about ETs and what's not. Okay, just put that aside. That's something we're going to squabble about until the end of time. Just to explain the motivations behind, or the possible motivations behind the reactions we see to even remaining open-minded and curious. That's all someone like me would be asking. I'm not sitting here saying, I want you all to accept as some kind of article of faith everything I have as a theory about this. My theory about this is very unique, even amongst UFO researchers. And it should be. And yours should be unique and all that, right? But hopefully we're all motivated towards the truth. We can't have our own truth with this. We want to know the factual, objective truth about this. Until we get that, we're going to have our own little specially crafted theories to weigh against the factual, objective truth. So I'll just wrap this little bit. Attachment to meaning and worldview stability. We need a worldview. You need that worldview to be stable. If you unstabilize that worldview that has been baked into the pie from the tender ages up till adulthood, you can cause mass psychosis in those people if that stability gets threatened. In fact, most of our anxiety and fear is not about the external world at all. It's about losing the feeling of stability and meaning, losing our worldview. So I suffer from this. We have to admit, all of us are subject to this. So whether we're talking religious frameworks, whether we're talking scientific materialist frameworks, they give people a ready-made sense of cosmic specialness. Well, this would be more on the religious side, because in the scientific worldview, they've just kind of accepted that we're not special. That's how they believe. Like, we're not really that special, right? Like, and I disagree with both of them. I don't think we're uniquely special, but we're also not special. So there's a bridge there. But either way, if you look at the religious framework specifically, it gives people a ready-made sense of cosmic specialness, that, we're God's chosen, we're central to creation, etc. Now, what's interesting to me is it's kind of like that sibling. If my oldest daughter, who's 3 years older than my youngest, I have two daughters, one's 14. If she's first child, gets all the nurturing attention, specialness, uniqueness from her parents, and then this new child enters into the mix that she's going to compete for that for. That's the resource they're going to compete for, just instinctively. Even though they still grew up, they love each other, they're sisters, they're all these kinds of things. There's this little rivalry because it's a competition over who's more special and unique. And in fact, if I compliment one and not the other, I immediately get in shit, and I have to then find a compliment for the other. This is just how it goes, right? And that's normal. They're young, they need that. They're like little plants. You got to water them, you got to help them grow into maturation, where one day, hopefully, this amazing thing happens where they mature into adulthood and they no longer need that level of constant reassurance that they're special and unique and loved, that they've gained that from within themselves, that they have now become the source of determining that they're special, unique, and loved, and that they don't need to have this competition with their siblings because they're also special, unique, and they are also loved equally by their parents, right? But extrapolate this, what I'm talking about, across the whole human race. See, there's a baked in assumption in the religious paradigm that's in the dogmatic one, that says if other life forms exist outside of Earth, this suddenly threatens the idea of God creating the universe and creating this special, unique species that's just for him, and we're just his loving, children and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I think that's flawed. I agree instead with this statement from Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake in the Vatican in the 1600s for daring to challenge the dogma of the church at the time, with a totally different explanation of all the ancient wisdom. They didn't like it, so they killed the guy. Okay, tells you what they think of people that disagree with them. But he said this, he dared say this. Okay, now this is for those people that feel threatened right now that I'm allegedly attacking their religious view. You don't need to give up your overall view. You just need to include the other siblings in it to understand what I'm saying. Here's what understand what Bruno's saying. He said this: God is infinite. We can't even understand that word infinite. God is infinite, he says. So his universe must be too. It's logical. If the creator or the force or whatever, whether you think it's a guy with a beard, whether you think it's an actual deity, whether you think it's just a force or spirit and light or what, it kind of doesn't matter. God is infinite. His universe must be also infinite. That threatens us, but it shouldn't. We think that means we're not special, but it doesn't mean that. Let him continue. Thus is the excellence of God magnified and the greatness of his kingdom made manifest. He is glorified, not in one, but in countless suns, not in a single earth, a single world, but in 1,000, I say, an infinity of worlds, an infinity of siblings, an infinity of children, an infinity of an experimental process where light consciousness filters through matter and expresses itself in an infinite amount of ways across the cosmos. Why is that somehow? Why are people concluding when they look up at this, I feel so insignificant? And the number one argument from people that talk about things like flat earth, space is fake, and they come from that old medieval dogmatist perspective on it, they think it's a standard assumption that 7 point whatever billion humans on this little rock out in the Milky Way galaxy is the only expression of light and consciousness from the creator. Why can't we pull out a little bit and go, well, I mean, do you feel insignificant among 6.8 whatever 7 billion people? Does that make you feel insignificant? Does that give you an inferiority complex? That you're not special and loved? Because God has to spend his time loving 7 billion people. So that's still a lot of people to share the love around. What about 7 trillion, 80 trillion, infinite? If you're going to give God the property of being infinite, if you're going to agree with that, all-knowing, omniscient, creative force, whatever it is, right? The high power. Why are you limiting the unlimited and the infinite? Well, it's not because that's actually what the Bible says. It's not because these are guys that are biblical scholars saying this shit. And you can read all the Bibles on the earth and you can put it together and you can go, oh, interesting. Getting a little bit of a different perspective here. We've got different interpretations through different cultural lenses, different periods of time, interpreting the mystery of nature, the mystery of consciousness, the mystery of the divine, making conclusions on it, writing stories and myths about it, trying to describe it in their own ways. Now we've got modern humans that discovered this scientific process. Now we're filtering everything through the left brain instead of the right brain, right? The ancients were filtering it through the right brain. The moderns are filtering it through the left brain. That's why we are incommunicado with the ancient world. That's why we're misinterpreting and misunderstanding what the hell they were trying to talk about. At least that's the theory I'm bringing out for you here. And then he said this too. He said, innumerable suns exist. Innumerable earths revolve about these suns in a manner similar to the way the 7 planets revolve around our sun. and living beings inhabit these worlds. He's basically echoing what Tesla was saying. So back to the psychology then. So this is just my way of talking to the average dogmatist that is really, really threatened by the idea that there might be other forms of life outside this planet, in the same way that a sibling might be really, really threatened that their parents dare have another child to spread the love around even more. It's the same thing. That's just how I see it. And it's a sad misunderstanding of the potential of consciousness in this universe. It's our limited mind with our emotional preferences, because we have these needs that are valid needs. It's a gross misinterpretation of the reality. It's a projection, actually, of your limitations on the creative force. Because you feel like you wouldn't be able to love and nurture and create and foster and caretake or whatever billions of galaxies. Therefore, it's easier and simpler for the human mind to rationalize that it was only here. But no, Giordano Bruno, he died saying it. No. If the creator is infinite, so is his creation. I'm not sure why that's so hard to swallow. Well, now I know why. Because it's not preferred. That's not a preferred statement. Just like that sibling it's not a preferred state that mommy and daddy are now going to love 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 other kids. Right? It's very simple. So psychological research, these are just some of the notes. Psychological research points to meaning making, existential terror, and the human craving for specialness and uniqueness as being central to this question. Highly religious people often get a strong sense of purpose and cosmic significance from their faith, which frames humanity or their group as uniquely central to creation. Accepting intelligent extraterrestrial life of any kind, ancient visitations, or scriptures as misinterpreted encounters with such beings would definitely threaten that framework. And it dilutes human exceptionalism and forces theological reworking. And trust me, I know this is like we're pulling teeth now. This is not what people want to do. This is for the few to speculate on. Okay, because most people are just already signing off, just like squirrel nuts. This is too much. I'm out, right? But that's okay. That's okay too, because in the end, the truth doesn't care. Whatever the truth is about this really big question that I'm trying to answer, and I'm not here to say I have the answer. I'm just giving you the arguments, okay? The truth stands. Our opinions don't stand against it. If our opinions clash with the truth, they are meaningless because they're not rooted in the truth. That's the issue. What if the truth that we say, the truth is out there, I wish I could know the truth, why are they not telling us the truth? Well, what if the truth is not desired? What if you find out, and there's many ways we can get into the case studies on this, that the vast majority of people are running from the truth, not towards it. They're running from freedom, not towards it. And this is a psychological compulsion. This is a subconscious compulsion. What if that's what was discovered in a lot of these mind control experiment programs, along with some very handy information for corrupt mafia governments to use it as weapons against their population, right? But at the core, you still find out the same thing. And then you have all the psychoanalysts, all the thinkers on it that are rolling out reams of data on this all the time and have written lots of books on this and have really described it beautifully, where you realize, yeah, a lot of our formation of belief and perspective is rooted in childhood, it's rooted in life experience, and it's rooted in a need to have worldview stability. Not the truth. The truth is not the need. I mean, it is in one sense, because if you're going to lie to yourself, your survival rate decreases, right? But on that right brain, subconscious, the desire of the child coming out, right? That the desire to keep the framework intact is greater than the desire to look at a truth that might shatter that framework. That's why talking to people about anything that turns over the apple cart of the sacred cows is basically impossible. It's pointless to debate. That's why people like me, I just try to present, I put it out. I could be right, it could be wrong, it could be a mix. I don't know. I'm just putting it out and everybody makes up their own minds, right? It's very hands off. I'm not here to convert anybody. We're just here to think. Just here to think. And sometimes thinking is challenging because it's very much self-confronting, right? That's why people hate psychology, and I get it. Like I hate it too sometimes. It's a little too deep. But you need to know the psychology because that's how you understand the lens that we're all looking at any of these deep mysteries through. So it's very important. Have I got any other ones here? This is just a note on both sides, okay? This is going after the materialists as well. So both sides, so the materialists, we'll call them the dogmatic materialists and the dogmatic religionists, okay? Both sides are defending their core story of what humans are and why we matter. That is the psychological root. Religious dogmatists see humanity as uniquely special, God's chosen centerpiece of creation. Advanced ET visitors or ancient scriptures as records of physical interactions with them collapses that. I don't think it actually does, but that's the fallacy in their thinking because they didn't come across that concept from Tesla and Bruno and all the others. It forces a rewrite of theology, purpose, and cosmic hierarchy. So they reframe the same phenomena as demons or angels or other explain it away as just all a hoax to keep that old story intact. We got data that shows it clearly that only 49% of people for whom religion is very important think intelligent life probably exists elsewhere versus 76% for whom it's not. Now, materialist scientists and skeptics, this is their psychology. They have their own sacred narrative as well. That we're the pinnacle of a purely natural Darwinian process on one unremarkable planet in a vast but empty cosmos, and progress comes only through rigorous, repeatable lab science. Admitting ongoing or historical physical ET visitation would undermine the "we're alone, we're the smartest so far" assumption baked into much of cosmology in modern science. It threatens institutional authority and funding models. That's also a big issue. A lot of egos get destroyed with this. Because if aliens were here, why do we need billion-dollar telescopes? I don't know if that's the best argument. This forces a paradigm shift as big as Copernicus or Darwin, and many careers and reputations are invested in the current materialist framework. So this produces cognitive dissonance. So, and again, guys, when I'm talking here, these are general categories of the materialist scientist and material and this and that. I see people in the chat, they're like, well, I'm this, but I don't believe that. Every individual is unique. You all have your own minds. And that's the whole point, is I'm trying to shake you out of groupthink. Groupthink. Groupthink doesn't serve us, especially with complicated mysteries like this. I'm here to tell you this isn't about what the government's telling you. This isn't about what the priests are telling you. This isn't about what the scientists are telling you. This isn't about what social media is telling you. This isn't about what I'm telling you. This is your subject. This is your adventure. Going through the weeds on this, looking at it from different perspectives. I've oscillated between different perspectives my entire life, looking at it from different angles, going with one theory over here. I'll probably change it again, especially as new info comes out. If we get new bombshell, irrefutable, damning evidence and facts that destroy everything I've just said, then I'm going to go with that. And I hope you do too. But it's always a case of the people that have that dogmatic, it's for sure, this is the affirmative way, it is the only way. When they have that, unfortunately, that brain, that physical mind is incapable of seeing new information. There's no light coming in anymore. It's closed. It's over. It's done. And that's not conducive to evolving your thinking and staying close to keeping open-minded enough to actually see what the truth is with some of these impenetrable mysteries. Some of them are impenetrable, right? Yeah. Someone's a Dead Star Cave Girl saying scientism is the biggest religion on the planet. Well, you know what? I get what you're saying. Actually, religion is the biggest religion on the planet. It's just another one. In fact, you'll start to realize that when you take all the costumes off, you take all the performance off, you take all the little cliques and the little groups and the little warring factions of all the religions and all the scientific paradigms and all the philosophy, you take the lid off all of that, what are you left with? A naked human being, naked consciousness, naked your life experience. We have a variety of ways to view the world and therefore to view this kind of a phenomena. And this would be, we're talking about ETs today, guys. We could be talking about anything, any of the great mysteries. In science used to be the true science, the real scientists, the scientists I admire, they are motivated by curiosity. That's real. That's what science is supposed to be, investigating mystery. We don't know or understand something. Let's find a method that will help us determine what the thing is and how to identify it and categorize it and understand it, right? It's valuable. It's sad to see this sort of scientism, as we call it, creep into the institutional academic world that has created its own sort of dogmas of these are the theories, we're basing it off this, we're basing it off that. They all go back to their basis, just as the dogmatist got their basis, right? And then you watch, this was another huge thing for me. It got me motivated to study religion and mythology, was that I would grow up watching debates between theologians, between priests, between pastors, and between atheists and scientists. And I would just watch those debates. They'd have them all over the place. They're still fun to watch, you know? And you find out there's a reason neither of those sides can resolve the conflict. Each member of those sides will tell you, well, the reason we can't resolve that conflict is because the other side is just wrong. And they're just not willing to accept the truth that I have on my side. But the other side is saying the same thing. Did we evolve from monkeys? Did we magically appear here after Adam and Eve? Is there a third option? Right? So we've been stuck in a binary debate this entire time. It's no wonder people aren't able to open their mind enough to get outside of both of those paradigms and go, well, what if this subject opens up a door to entirely different paradigms of how to see the world and how to see history and how to see our place here? And you find out, well, that sounds exciting to someone like me, but for some reason, it's not a super popular way of thinking about it. People would prefer to pick a safe camp that's established, because those two worldviews, the religious dogmatist and the materialist scientist, they're established. There's billions behind it. There's thousands of years of development behind it. They've had thousands of years to generate their arguments and their apologists. It's official, it's institutional, it's funded, it's popular. Celebrities are picking one of those two, not other ones. So that's been the dominant. And people like Giordano Bruno and many others who've been executed or confined or imprisoned or silenced or censored to try to give people a totally different way of seeing this whole thing. You can look at the evidence from many different, we're all looking at the same information. We're all looking at the same evidence. Some of us are counting some things as evidence. Other people are dismissing it as being evidence at all, right? But there's many ways of looking at it, and we've only been taught two. Don't you find that interesting? So when this kind of comes out in the subject, and now it's changing the zeitgeist and everybody's interested about it, everybody's got their theories, you have to understand the context of everything I'm telling you here to truly understand the history of this question about these kind of mysteries and why there's these two main camps and then a few little splinter cell deviations of those camps. And then there's the people you've never even heard of that have totally different ways of looking at it. Someone has promoted the dominant strains. The average people don't have time or desire to think too far outside the box. I've already explained why. If the mystery gets too complicated and there's no real answer at the end of it, nobody wants anything to do with it, because people want certain answers. We want certainty. And what those two camps have done is create manufactured certainty as their main currency. Not to say they don't both also have truths and facts to share with you. They absolutely do. In fact, both sides make good points, right? Both sides have great facts and data and information to bolster their arguments. But because I don't think human consciousness would attach to a pure, unadulterated lie with that. So there has to be some truths in the mix in order to keep the debate going. The issue is at the end of it, it's not settled. And maybe it's because we've just been missing information that we need declassified, or we need to be brought into our domain of knowledge in order to be even capable cognitively of speculating on this. And that's why I've been saying for a long time, it could be the reason this isn't disclosed by whether it's them or us or combination or whatever's going on with this, is because we might not actually be developmentally cognitive enough to handle it all. So we're going to be given what we can handle, because you don't want to have, like, they've done many experiments where they overdose somebody with too many facts. It literally fries their brain. Too much truth can fry your brain. I've watched people go into this movement lose their minds. And these were people who were very rational, reasonable, great people. They went too far down the rabbit hole. They found a lot of truths. It fried them. The truth is so powerful, it can have that effect. So it's huge. Now, where are we at? How much long? We've been going 2 hours? Okay. So technically, it's Friday. And I usually do a Substack only show every Friday. I usually do an hour of me talking about whatever current events. And then at 5 p.m. PST, I bring my lovely wife in for the Dave and Monica show. What we're going to do is today, I'm just going to keep this stream going for the next hour. And then I'm going to restart only on Substack. It'll be free. You can still access it. It's just going to be only over there. And I'll bring Monica in and we'll talk. She had some other things she wanted to talk about as well. I don't know if she's in the mood to talk about aliens or not. We'll see. But just want to let you guys know about that. So we're going to keep going for a bit. I have some things I want to show you. Yeah, Cosmic Fern Tree says 100%. Many folks don't respond well to too many rabbit holes. Yeah. And especially not just rabbit holes, where rabbit holes, when we use that term, it has this this bad connotation that means, oh, you're just researching a bunch of nonsense. What you're referring to there is rabbit holes that are true. And that can be an issue. Oh, this is another interesting statement. Cosmic Fern Tree. God, universe, science is like a disco ball. Everyone is observing their own unique little mirror piece. Perception of reality is unique. Same goes with the ET topic. Huge variety of perspectives. That's a good one. The disco ball. I never thought of it with that. That's a good one. I usually use the crystal. It's like truth is like, it's like light passing through a crystal. The crystal has many rough edges and is mirroring it in different ways. And people are looking at it from different angles, right? It also, another huge quote that is life-changing for me, I found it at a young age, was from the poet Rumi, who I love, who talked about truth being like a mirror that fell from earth, or fell from heaven to earth, smashed on the ground, shattered into thousands of pieces. And then humans came from all over the world and picked up a shard of the mirror and thought they found the truth. I always thought that was an interesting way of putting it. That's why we're all fighting over our ideas and religions and histories, is because we've all been given little shards. And we think our shard is a better shard than the other shard, or a different shard. And maybe there is differences, but in the end, the truth, he's trying to talk about how the truth transcends the world. That's why on Unslaved and on Michael Tessarian's website, he used that great Irish slogan. I can't pronounce it in Irish or Gaelic, but it just means truth against the world. Forget what the world thinks, because the world is mostly wrong. Truth transcends the world. Truth transcends our perspective of what we prefer it to be. It's a very humbling perspective to come into. And there's a reason your priests or your scientific dogmatists don't teach you that. They'll just say truth against the world, but ours is the only truth. They'll add that little caveat, and there's your cultism. What the great teachers, the people that I think are genuine and authentic in their search for the truth, are always going to tell you that There's what you prefer the truth to be, and then there's what it actually is. And what you need to do is align with the pursuit of truth and not make it a dogma and not turn it into a cult. That's the more rational position. That's going to get you, and we still might not get the full truth, but you'll get closer to it and you won't get wrapped up in a bunch of mysteria that's built out of people that have frightened minds. That's the thing. Frightened minds. Both these extremes I've described that are very much relevant to this conversation and who've been controlling this conversation, who are financed by the big tables to control the conversation. They are offering you extremisms. They're offering you a closed box, a closed loop. They're not offering you open-minded exploration of the mysteries of the universe. They're offering you that. That's the advertisement. When you get in, it's freaking Jim Jones, just a different variety. And that's a frightened mind that creates that. Frightened minds create cults and attend cults. Liberated, free minds, empowered minds want nothing to do with dogma, nothing to do with cults, nothing to do with groups, because they know the truth doesn't visit those places. Hysteria, anxiety, projection, right? Frightened minds. So I think frightened minds, and there are many reasons to be a frightened mind throughout the history of this world. I don't blame anybody, but frightened minds got their hands on ancient wisdom accrued through time, through experience, through deep thinking from all over the world. They got their hands on it and they reinterpret it through their frightened mind. And that's been the bane of the world, the curse of the world. That's why we're divided. That's why we're still fighting over this shit after thousands of years. And look to this moment as these mysteries. Because I think, what if we look at it like this for a quick second? Let's just zoom out even more. What if there's a force acting? If you want to go with cosmic force, consciousness, God, universe, soul, spirit, if you want to go even a little bit into that world and look at the world from there being something that's part of the fabric of our reality that is what you would call divine or spirit or motivated, however you want to break it down. There's something bigger than aliens, bigger than all of us, right? Like what Giordano was brooding, the infinite God, the infinite consciousness, right? If we go there at all in our thinking, then we would have to start looking at this from a totally different perspective, that if we live in an age where it seems like a lot of secrets are coming out right now, okay? And there's many forces at work. I'm not going to get into all of them individually now, but we've spoken about this as being sort of like an age of revealing, that it's a product of technology. It's a product of where we're at psychologically. It's a product of the times. It's a product of certain people making massive influences on our history right now. There's a lot of moving pieces that are somehow bringing from under the carpet all the things we couldn't see. We had to lift up the carpet to see what was underneath it. There's an unveiling. There's a revealing that's happening, right? That could mean there's a higher force, like the force of nature or something. It's beyond government capacity to disclose or not disclose. It's beyond the capacity of whatever these beings are or what they're not. Like, it's beyond all of us, that there's almost like there's a process happening that's bigger than us all, but that includes us all, that is motivating us to a level of our evolution as spirit, as matter, or whatever, that is guiding this process that's beyond all of those levels of control on Earth. Let's just call them the temporal controls of physical people saying, no, we don't want them to know. It's almost like that doesn't matter. That's not going to matter. The truth has a force of its own. The truth has a will of its own. It has to be known eventually. You can't suppress it forever. It's like taking a inflated beach ball and trying to hold it underwater. You have to physically hold it underwater to keep it underwater. Its natural state is to pop right up and sit on the surface. Well, the truth is like that. People that have been hiding, whether they're in government or whether it's everyday Joes that are just running from the truth because it's too terrifying for them. They're trying to force to hold it underneath. But consciousness, it's got its own thing. And it's going to force it up whether you like it or not. I mean, I've experienced this. I'm 44 years old. I've had many dark nights of the soul where truths that I was trying not to face, it's kind of forced their way into being. And I had to confront it whether I liked it or not. I had other plans that weekend, but nope, time to face your existential crisis right now. Like that happens to all of us, right? What if that's happening to our entire world? What if that's part of our position in the universe, like where we're situated right now? I don't know. Maybe there's greater forces beyond all of this that are bringing this truth to the surface, that are creating even the desire in many people to want to see it. And that desire creates that consensus reality that we do want to know. Maybe we're moving on from my hypothesis as a species slowly, that the hypothesis is humans want to run from the truth. Well, maybe that's changing. And that's why there's more pressure on these governments. There's more pressure. There's even human beings, because what is government but just other human beings? You can say everybody's evil and corrupt, but what about your evil and corruption? It's easy to cast stones in glass houses, right? So we're all human beings. There might be multiple complicated reasons for things happening. And there might be people from within the system that were ordered to stand down and not release information. They're just saying, yeah, fuck you. We're doing this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to come out and say it. Nobody's going to believe me because the government and the media have such a horrible track record, but I'm still doing it. What if that, right? And that could be happening on many fronts. So everybody's so dissatisfied right now, but we're not quite getting all of the D class on Epstein, on aliens, on history, on this, on all the wars, on the COVID, on the vaccine. We're not quite there, but we're getting closer. Things are happening, and they're happening in just average people. I speak to doctors and nurses that talk to me on a regular basis that are writing books now and coming out and telling everybody what they know about what went down during the pandemic. They were too afraid to talk about it then, but now's their time. These aren't people that are like working in the CDC or the World Health Organization. These are just local doctors and nurses. What if that's happening in the military? What if that's happening in different areas of government? What if that's happening across the board? Because there's something happening to human conscious in general that is steering us towards the truths that we need to know at this time in our history. Because if we don't know these truths, we don't survive what's coming. But if we do, we skyrocket into a future we can't imagine, and we facilitate a level of evolution and advancement that we could only previously dream about. These are all just my speculations, guys. I'm just wondering. I have an intuition about it. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But I just feel like there's something higher than all of this that's putting this out and even motivating us to ask these questions and have these curious things and dive into it, and and that's a healthy thing. And that means that if we continue on that path, you will get access to more truth than you previously knew, right? So let me do some reading for you. I've been talking about this. I was going to do this over a Firecast. I know you guys love those. I love those too. But we just got issued the warning yesterday they were not allowed to have any fires because the sun is shining too much or something. Now they're worried about wildfires, and I get it because there is a lot of problems with that where I live. So I can't do a Firecast version of this right now. If that ever lifts, I'll definitely do it. But I'm going to do this right at my desk. I've been talking about this one for a while. I collect these old Reader's Digests. I have this one. What's the date on this? Let me get you all the details. It's called The Mysteries of the Unexplained. Right up my alley. This is 1982. Wow. It just so happens to be published the year I was born. Interesting. Okay. So 1982, the Reader's Digest, I grew up reading it. They would always collect these stories. They have an entire section and multiple chapters literally documenting the entire UFO history, like from Project Blue Book to the whole thing. So they kind of go through that history of the relationship with the subject, with government and D-class and all that. But then they go through stories and accounts. And this is where it gets interesting, because I've read these stories and collected these stories my entire life, from books, from National Archives, from stuff people send to me, and from person-to-person discussions with people. I've got so many of them that I've been told. Okay. And you either sit back and go, all of them are bullshit, because that's the only position you can have if you're going to go on the path of this is all bullshit. You have to say that every single experience, account, testimony is just a lie. And that's a sad life to live in that level of nihilism. If even one of them is true, it destroys everything. Just think about that. That's how crazy this subject is. If even one of these stories is real, everything we think we know has to be sort of rethought. That's exciting to me. That doesn't terrify me personally. That excites me. What do you guys think? Let me know. Are you excited by that notion, or does that terrify you? It's okay if it terrifies you. It's probably a bit of both, right? Because we don't like change. But I want to read you a couple of these. We're going to start in ancient history. Okay, so this is from Reader's Digest, 1982, Mysteries of the Unexplained. The Roman author Julius Obsequens, I can't say his name, believed to have lived in the 4th century AD, drew on Livy as well as other sources of his time to compile his book Protagorium Liber, which describes many peculiar phenomena, some of which could be interpreted as UFO sightings. Here's just a few examples, okay? So this is from 216 BC. That's what it says here. Things like ships were seen in the sky over Italy at Arpai, 180 Roman miles east of Rome in Apulia. A round shield was seen in the sky. At Capua, the sky was all on fire, and one saw figures like ships. Then you got 99 BC. When C. Murius and L. Valerius were consuls in Tarquinia, there fell in different places a thing like a flaming torch, and it came suddenly from the sky. Towards sunset, a round object like a globe or round or circular shield took its path in the sky from west to east. 90 BC. In the territory of Spolidium, 65 Roman miles north of Rome in Umbria, a globe of fire of golden color fell to the earth, gyrating. It then seemed to increase in size, rose from the earth, and ascended into the sky, where it obscured the disk of the sun with its brilliance. It revolved toward the eastern quadrant of the sky. A later chronicle of inexplicable phenomena, one Conrad Wolfhart, a professor of grammar and dialectics, who, under the pen name of Lycosthenes, wrote the compendium Protagorium ac Astoroium Chronicon, published in 1567, excuse my Latin, mentions the following events. AD 393, strange lights were seen in the sky in the days of the Emperor Theodosius. All of a sudden, a bright globe appeared at midnight. It shone brilliantly near the day star, planet Venus, about the circle of the zodiac. This globe shone a little less brightly than the planet, and little by little, a great number of other glowing orbs drew near the first globe. The spectacle was like a swarm of bees flying round the beekeeper, and the light of these orbs was as if they were dashing violently against each other. Soon they blended together into one awful flame, and bodied forth to the eye as a horrible two-edged sword. The strange globe, which was first seen, now appeared like a pommel to a handle, and all the little orbs fused with the first shone as brilliantly as the first globe. And this report is similar to modern accounts of UFO formations. This was documented by Harold T. Wilkins, Flying Saucers on the Attack. A rare typeseed book from 1493, now preserved in museum at Verdun, France, contains what might be the earliest pictorial representation of a UFO in Europe. Hartmann Schiedel author of the book Liber Chronicarium, describes a fiery sphere seen in 1034 soaring through the sky in a straight course from south to east and then veering toward the setting sun. The illustration accompanying the account shows a cigar-shaped form haloed by flames sailing through a blue sky over a green rolling countryside. A term equivalent to our flying saucer was actually used by the Japanese approximately 700 years before it came into the West. Ancient documents describe an unusual shining object seen in the night of October 27th, 1180, as a flying earthware vessel. After a while, the object, which had been heading northeast from a mountain in Kii province, changed its direction and vanished below the horizon, leaving a luminous trail. And then here's a classical description from William of Newburgh's Chronicle of a flying saucer seen in England toward the end of the 12th century. At Byland or Beggarland Abbey, the largest Cistercian abbey in England, in the North Yorkshire Riding, while the abbot and monks were in the reforium, a flat, round, shining, silvery object, discus is the word used in Latin. It flew over the abbey and caused the utmost terror. That is how they would describe it, the old Brits. This big shiny disc flew over the abbey and caused just the utmost terror amongst the villagers. These are awesome. What might be called the first official investigation of a UFO sighting occurred in Japan in 1235. We got anybody from Japan in here? I love Japan. Have to visit. What do you guys know over there in Japan about this? I've spoken to many Japanese that have lots of stories to tell me. So there's something going on in Japan. 1235. During the night of September 24th, while General Yoritsumi and his army were encamped, they observed mysterious lights in the heavens. The lights were seen in the southwest for many hours, swinging, circling, and moving in loops. The general ordered a full-scale scientific investigation of these strange events. The report finally submitted to him was the soothing ring of many contemporary explanations offered for UFO phenomena. In essence, it read, "The whole thing is completely natural. General, it is only the wind making the stars sway." And of course, they're trying to explain it away. And then many usual celestial events were recorded in Japanese chronicles during the Middle Ages. As in Western society, such occurrences were usually considered portents, often resulting in panics and other social disturbances. Here are some examples. On September 12th, 1271. So 1271, would you say that is a little bit earlier than the development of, I don't know, the military industrial complex, the US government who's been holding the secret? Like, we're going well before, so we don't have to just rely on the government, guys. Okay. This is going back to the 1200s. Okay. 1271, the famous priest Nichiren was about to be beheaded at Tatsuno-Kuchi, Kamakura, when there appeared in the sky an object like a full moon, shiny and bright. Needless to say, the officials panicked and the execution was not carried out. So this guy's UFO experience actually stayed his execution. In 1361, a flying object described as being shaped like a drum, about 20 feet in diameter, emerged from the inland sea off western Japan. This is another one about the UFOs in the ocean coming out of the water. I've got so many people I've spoken to from the Navy that tell me this kind of stuff. And they don't know each other, and they still tell me the same kind of occurrences. It just makes me wonder what's going on in the oceans. On March 8th, 1468, a dark object which made a sound like a wheel flew from Mount Kasuga toward the west at midnight. The European record of possible UFO sightings continued throughout the 14th and 15th centuries. So now we're in Europe. 1322, in the first hour of night of November 4th, there was seen in the sky over Uxbridge, England, a pile or pillar of fire the size of a small boat, pallid and living in color. It rose from the south, crossed the sky with a slow and grave motion, and went north. Out of the front of the pile, a fervent red flame burst forth with a great beam of light. its speed increased and it flew through the air. And it's like, it spells through as throw, THRO with an apostrophe. It flew through the air. Because that's how they spoke back then. On November 1st, 1461, a fiery thing. Oh, where's that page? Where's the fiery thing? A fiery thing like an iron rod of good length and as large as one half of the moon was seen in the sky over Arras, France, for less than a quarter of an hour. This object was also described as being shaped like a ship from which fire was seen flowing. Then we got descriptions from 1733 and another almost classical account of one of those gleaming silvery bodies today referred to as flying saucers. So from 1733, something in the sky which appeared in the north but vanished from my sight as it was intercepted by trees from my vision. I was standing in a valley. The weather was warm. The sun shone brightly. On a sudden, it's funny how they say on a sudden. It throws me off because we say now all of a sudden, but I guess they said it like that. On a sudden, it reappeared, darting in and out of my sight with an amazing coruscation. The color of this phenomena was like burnished or new washed silver. It shot with speed like a star falling in the night, but it had a body much larger and a train longer than any shooting star I have ever seen. The next day, Mr. Edgecombe informed me that he and another gentleman had seen this strange phenomena at the same time as I had. It was about 15 miles from where I saw it and steering a course from east to north. The witness of this event was a Mr. Cracker of Fleet, a small township in Dorset, England. Mr. Cracker said that he saw his flying saucer in broad daylight on December 8th, 1733. Now we got another one. A fellow of the Royal Society in London was about to cross St. James Park on his way home from a meeting on December 16th, 1742, when he was startled by the appearance of a remarkable celestial object. His account goes as follows. A light rose from behind the trees and houses to the south and west, which at first I thought was a rocket of large size. But when it rose 20 degrees, it moved parallel to the horizon and waved like this. He draws an undulating line and went on in the direction of north by east. It seemed very near. Its motion was very slow. I had it for about half a mile in view. A light flame was turned backward by the resistance the air made to it. From one end, it emitted a bright glare and fire like that of burning charcoal. That end was a frame like bars of iron and quite opaque to my sight. At one point on the longitudinal frame or cylinder, it issued a train in the shape of a tail of light, more bright at one point on the rod or cylinder and growing gradually fainter at the end of the rod or cylinder, so that it was transparent for more than half of its length. The head of this strange object seemed about half a degree in diameter and the tail near 3 degrees in length. The observer signed himself CM, probably preferring to remain anonymous to avoid expected skepticism and scoffing of his fellow members. Because, I mean, Britain is one of the most collectivized societies when it comes to, like, just look what they did to David Beckham. And if you're a member of the Royal Society and you start talking about UFOs, you get destroyed. This account of a most unusual sighting was reported by Monseigneur de Rostan, an amateur astronomer and member of the Medico-Physical Society of Basel, Switzerland. On August 9th, 1762, at Lausanne, Switzerland, he observed through a telescope a spindle-shaped object crossing and eclipsing the sun. Rostam was able to observe this object almost daily for close to a month. He also managed to trace its outline with a camera obscura and sent the picture to the Royal Academy of Sciences in Paris. Unfortunately, this image, probably the first one ever obtained of a UFO, no longer exists. A friend of Monseigneur de Rostan living at Seoul near Basel also observed the spindle-shaped object against the sun, but it appeared to present more of an edge and was not quite as broad. Oddly enough, the UFO was not visible to a third astronomer, a Monseigneur Messier, who studied the sun during the same time from Paris, an indication that the object was not a sunspot since it was visible only from certain angles. What this book does, we're going through the centuries, right? It goes even further back, I think. And we go into 1800s to 1948. Here's a good one. There was a shape resembling an enormous trumpet, about 425 feet long, that was seen swaying in the sky at Oaxaca, Mexico on July 6, 1874. According to one report, it was visible for several minutes by numerous witnesses. Then we have the first appearance in print of the term saucer, which was in 1878, nearly 70 years before the famous Arnold sighting, which made the term almost synonymous with an unidentified flying object. So this is where the saucer term came before even the original, the one we think was the original. On January 24th of that year, John Martin, a Texas farmer who lived just south of Denison, saw a dark disc-shaped object sailing high in the heavens at a wonderful speed. When relating what he saw, he described the thing as a saucer. The story was published the next day in the Denison Daily Herald. Oh, this one. I'll do this one and then we'll move on. Because, guys, there's like chapters and chapters of this. I could just go here for hours. These are all collected. 2 giant luminous wheels. This is going to be relevant to something released in the recent files here. Estimated as about 130 feet in diameter, were observed spinning. So 2 giant luminous wheels were observed spinning above the surface and then slowly descending into the waters of the Persian Gulf by the crew of the ship Vulture on May 15th, 1879. In May of the following year, a British East India Company steamer, the Patna, sighted wheels of a similar sort and in the same part of the ocean. In the latter case, a phosphorescent glint was seen in the waters surrounding these whirling objects. Ooh, phosphorescent glint under the waters seen after the object went under. Go look at the Shag Harbor incident in Halifax, Nova Scotia. They describe the same thing in that account. A number of years later, several other such reports added to this mystery. A huge rotating wheel was observed in the Persian Gulf by the SS Kilwa at 8:30 p.m. on April 10, 1901. In 1906, a giant wheel was reported by a British steamer in the Gulf of Oman, and in 1909, a similar sighting was made by a Danish captain in the China Sea. So these guys are all unrelated, seeing the same thing. According to the captain, the wheel, which rotated on and just below the surface of the water, was illuminated and had a hub. Finally, still another wheel appearing as a horizontal disk of light over the waters was observed in August 1910 in the South China Sea by the Dutch steamer Valachen. These semi-aquatic spinning wheels have been thought by some to originate in the oceans or possibly to be submersible spacecraft. And there's a picture of an artist rendition. You guys can see. Let me get this up to the camera. Right there. So see, in 1906, the crew of a British steamer saw a huge illuminated wheel, seemingly larger than their ship, spinning just above the waters of the Persian Gulf near Oman. Okay. So, dude, this just keeps going all the way up to they got actual documents from past D classes. It just goes on and on up to the modern age. Shiny egg-shaped objects. Dude, it just keeps going. So I'm going to save the spot that we're at. And I'm just going to keep revisiting this. I don't have all day to do this reading. Because now, after I've done all that, after I've gone through what I think are my best arguments here, some good ways of thinking about things, getting into the psychology, getting into the history, understanding the 2 main camps that we're filtering this type of phenomena through, trying to look at a totally different perspective on it as this stuff rolls out. Let's take a look at what they've actually dropped for a little bit here. First of all, let me see if I got any good questions. The Sirius B says, Dave, have you heard Josh from Overwatch's theory? So my good buddy Josh Reed, I think you're talking about, that some of the plasma UFOs could be remnants of an ancient Atlantean weapon system, which is why they're in the Atlantic Ocean. I have not heard that. I will have to talk to Josh about it. Karma Michelle says, it's been an epic struggle between ignorance and truth ever since they burned down the Library of Alexandria. Yeah, you're not wrong to go all the way back. I mean, and that was just one of many libraries, great libraries that were physically burned. There's many book burnings and library burnings throughout history. Jim Mars did a really good book. Oh, I should have grabbed it. I got to interview him on, it was one of his last books before he passed away. He documented the UFO thing. He wrote the book Alien Agenda, really interesting stuff. But he has a whole chapter on the burning of Alexandria, and he counted 11 major libraries similar to the Library of Alexandria, which were burnt and destroyed. And then if you bracket that, and I were to bring Michael Tessarian on here, he would say, well, not only were those libraries burnt, but much of their best contexts were sequestered away by various clerical orders that maintain those original transcripts to this day in private collections. So I would like to see that declassed as well, not just what the US government has. I also want to know about the private collections and what some of these secret societies in the world know about this subject. That would also be an interesting disclosure. So just want to say that. But let's get into this now. I'm going to do a little share screen. We got about half hour before I start the Dave and Monica show over on Substack for you. Let me pull it up. And we'll do this. All right. So I'm going to go in my bookmarks. I know people are sleuthing all through these files, so these are a couple hours old. I'll just start from the top. I just bookmarked some of the ones I thought were interesting. This is from Pinot Americano. Can you guys see everything? Okay. He's like, I'm watching all of these UFO videos, and I think it's obvious that they are here and they have always been here. I think the real question is, why haven't they made any significant contact with us? Well, if we're speculating on this, let's assume it's real. Let's assume they're here. Let's just imagine for a moment that why would you actually disclose? Instead of asking why haven't they, why would you? Start there. What would be good reasons for a highly advanced civilization that might be light years ahead of us in technology and understanding of the universe? Why would they want to come and talk to us? Why would they want to disclose? I've gave you the theory that maybe they're the reason there isn't disclosure. They're just like, yep, don't say anything. We're going to take what we need and move along, and there's nothing you can do about it. So we won't completely destroy your planet. We have our own reasons for being here. There might be different groups. I mean, you might be doing different races, different groups of people that are here. There might be a mix for the people that are like, it's aliens, it's interdimensionals, it's physical ETs. I mean, we might be dealing with a bit of all of those categories. Let's just keep the speculation here. But I could give you some reasons why they wouldn't want to. Have you observed the human race? If you were far advanced, why would you want to go and start talking to people that are just going to try, like, look, their perception would be completely objective to us. They'd be coming in and going, okay, look at this species. Oh, they're still killing each other over ideas. Oh, they still kill and destroy and attack anything that is different from them. Not a good look for us to come in. They're still too primitive. They're not ready. In fact, our presence could actually upend the entire place, the entire civilization. So it's not a good idea. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is a little darker, but we get a little Charles Fort about this. Do I have it? Should I do this? I don't know. I have great respect for Charles Fort. I mean, it's a good time to bring it in while we're here. I've read this so many times, but like, let's read it again after going through everything we've just discussed and try to think about this. Charles Fort was an American writer and researcher in the paranormal realm in the 1900s. And after studying accounts like in this Mysteries of Unexplained and many other inexplicable mysteries, he came to this question. And this is a brilliant question. It's a brilliant way of looking at it, right? You don't have to agree with it, but it's just, he's speculating based off all this information. There's only so many options, guys. So this is Charles Fort. He says, I think we're property. I should say we belong to something. that once upon this earth, or once upon a time, this earth was a no man's land, and that other worlds explored and colonized here and fought amongst themselves for possession. This is all the war of the gods. But now it's owned by something. So it's like the arguments were settled, right? The land claims were settled. Who owns the land? The land titles. These were the original land title wars. And that something owns this earth, all others warned off. That's what his speculation is. He said, would we, and this is getting to Pino's question there, would we humans, if we could, educate and sophisticate pigs, geese, and cattle? What if pigs, geese, and cattle find out that they are owned? And then they would have to find out the whyness of it, meaning the why. Why are we owned? What's the purpose of why we're owned? Oh, we're food and we're resources, and they make jackets out of us, and they do experiments on us and create medicines out of us. Interesting. So he says, I suspect that, after all, we're useful, that among contesting claimants, adjustment has occurred, or that something now has legal right to us by force or by having paid out analogs of beads for us to former, more primitive owners of us. So he's saying maybe the ownership changed hands. And all the others were warned off. That all of this has been known. This is where I come in and go, I want to know what's known. I'm not asking to know what's unknown. What's known by humans on this earth about this? And he speculates this. He said, all of this about the ownership of the multiple claimants, all of this has been known perhaps for ages to certain ones upon this earth, a cult or order, members of which function like bellwethers to the rest of us, or as superior slaves or overseers, directing us in accordance with instructions received from somewhere else in our mysterious usefulness. So this would bring it to, oh, why haven't they disclosed? Why aren't the governments allowed to disclose? What's the glass ceiling we have to break with all this classified secrecy? What could be so big happening on this earth that would require generations of secrecy amongst the elites? What could be that big? Some shit like this. Then he continues, but I accept that in the past, before proprietorship was established, inhabitants of a host of other worlds have dropped here, hopped there, wafted, sailed, flown, monitored, worked here, worked there. For all I know, been pulled here, been pushed, have come, have gone, have come in enormous numbers, have visited occasionally, have visited periodically for hunting, trading, replenishing harems, mining, have been unable to stay here, have established colonies here, have been lost here. Far advanced peoples or things and primitive peoples or whatever they were, white ones, black ones, yellow ones. I have a very convincing datum that the ancient Britons were blue ones. So basically he's speculating. He's like, look at all the stuff I've looked at, says Charles Ford. I think something owns us, and there was competition for who owns us, and that we're dealing with a variety of comings and goings of different civilizations who've come here for different reasons and different times, who've come and gone, have been awashed in history. He describes it, these past events, as like the way in Lord of the Rings in the opening in the first film, where they're describing the history of the ring. The ring of power, right? That the ring of power fell to the hands of this person and that person, and then was lost to time. And then myth became legend, legend became myth, and then history was forgotten. And then a hobbit came and found it, and then the whole thing begins. So Tolkien, even in his mythologizing, is kind of giving you this idea that there's chapters of human history. There's chapters of what has gone on this planet that are not known by either two camps of those dogmatists that I've described. Both of those camps are clinging to the belief that that's impossible, that has happened. But there is a third explanation that might explain the unexplainable mysteries. And he's like, it's a whole mixed bag of things that's gone on this planet. Think about, let's say, especially because I live in Canada, let's go to like Europe. Okay. The age of Europe, the age of civilization in Europe. I went to, come back full screen here. What am I doing with this? Sure. We'll go back in a sec. I went to Ireland. I went to England. I've been to Europe a bit, and I'll never forget. We went to Germany. And we went into Germany. We went into this bar. It was in Frankfurt, Germany. I can't remember where. I have to remember the name of the place. We went into this bar. It was like, we Googled it. We just found it. We went in. It has all this history to it. And it's like this, you have to go down this really awkward old staircase, and it's like this pit. And then you get inside, and it's this darkened bar when they have the lights set up and they're just playing, American rock in there and stuff. And we go down, we start talking to the barkeeps. And they're telling us the bar we were sitting having drinks at is literally like 1,600 years old. The same bar, the same wooden bar that's been sitting there is like 1,600 years old. 1,600s of guys cheering the ale, right? In Germany. We went to other places that were even older. Then you went to Ireland, and we saw like the Hill of Tara and some of these amazing stone circles and Newgrange and Noth and some of these places that are thousands of years old. It's like little hobbit places, right? And these old stone ruins that all line up with the sun, and it's just incredible. And you just think of the age, okay? The reason I'm bringing this up is because he's talking about all the comings and goings and the different histories that have happened here. And it's like, when I went into that German bar or into those old places, I went in another place in Germany. It was a restaurant. We had the biggest plate of schnitzel I've ever had in my life, okay? And everybody in Germany are just giants. The women were taller than me. Everybody was bigger than me. They're bringing these big friggin' platters of food. I'll never forget it. And we're sitting in this restaurant, and they're like, yeah, this place goes back to the medieval era. It got rebuilt because it was bombed out during World War II. You can even still see the bullet holes and some of the stuff that happened. It's incredible to go to. I love those historical places. And so I sit there as I'm thinking about what Fort was saying. And I imagine in that one place, in that one bar or tavern or restaurant or historical building, how many comings and goings has there been? How many different kings and queens did they see? How many different wars did they see? How many different local dramas did they see? How many UFO sightings did they have? How many things, how many human events has that place seen over time? How many generations dead and gone, new generations coming in, sitting down at that same place, right? And that's only going back a couple, maybe 1,500 years, 2,000 years. What if we go back before civilization? What if we go back to the lost chapters of this earth? What about the comings and goings that might have been happening that we only get little shards of evidence for, that archaeologists just go, man, we don't know. We just think, we're dating the entire pyramid because of the pots that we found on the ground that could be dated to this era, but we can't actually date the physical pyramid. So we're just assuming based on what was found around the pyramid, that's the date of the pyramid. How much of what we think we know is actually not as solid as we would prefer to believe? And there's been many comings and goings and many eras that are lost to time, just like that story of the ring. Myth became legend, and then it was lost to history, forgotten about, only to be resurrected later. Is that part of what we're dealing with? Interesting to think about. Let's go to the next few. This one here is the clearest evidence. This is from the drop today, from the Pentagon, of a Tic Tac UFO. And it's the clearest video we have of it. So whatever you think the UFO, the Tic Tacs are, there's people that think they're just advanced tech. Others have other ways of looking at it. I don't know. There you go. That was just interesting. This is from an audio. This is in the files as well. This audio is from 1965 from the Gemini missions, 2 astronauts in orbit. And they're saying, Houston, we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Let's just hear what they're saying.
This is Houston. Say again, 7? We have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. Is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Say again, 7? We have several, looks like the tree up here, actual sighting. It looks like hundreds of little particles going by to the left out about 3 to 4 miles. Understand you have many small particles going by on the left. At what distance? 4 miles. Large, looks like perhaps a vehicle that's disintegrated. Roger, understand they're about 3 to 4 miles away. They're past now, they're going to pull over. The booster on my side is a brilliant body of the sun, just black background, and with billions of particles around it. Bogey at 10 o'clock high.
Wow.
This is Houston. Say again, 7.
So this is interesting, okay, because yeah, and then perfect. Yeah, I've got the actual transcript. Is this the transcript? Let's see. I think this is the transcript. Oh no, this is a different transcript. So there's transcripts of conversations. What's this? Classified transcripts from Apollo 12 reporting seeing a lot of UAP taking off from the moon. My goodness. This is from the White House. An FBI 302 interview conducted with a senior U.S. intelligence official regarding his firsthand account of a UAP encounter at a U.S. military facility. Read the whole report. Is this even readable? I don't know. Let me see. There's some stuff blacked out, I'm sure, for. Let me see. Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, that's the official White House posting that. Do you ever think you'd see the day? Is this the same audio or is there something else?
Something that document dump. One of the astronauts says, we've got a few very bright particles or fragments or something that go drifting by as we maneuver. The control center says, Roger, understood. Another astronaut says, there's a whole bunch of big ones on my window down there, just bright. It looks like the 4th of July out of Ron's window. Another astronaut says, yes, now you can see some of them in shape. They're very jagged, angular fragments that are tumbling. This exchange has long been dismissed as floating insulation. But now the White House is saying, while this photo has been previously released and discussed by keen observers, there is no consensus about the nature of the anomaly. And this all started, of course, because we asked the president about it in February.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of
document dump? One of the astronauts says, we've got
a
few very bright particles or.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, sort of revisiting some of the old information that they already released and saying, look, there's actually something anomalous to it. I'll let you guys judge for yourself here. This one's interesting. An investigator for the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Here it is. March 22nd, 1950. Director of the FBI from Guy Hotel in Washington. Flying saucers information concerning. The following information was furnished to SARH Kurtzman by Carl Howe, Special Investigator, Sex Squad, Metropolitan Police Department. An investigator for the Air Force has stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. They were described as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by three bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots. According to Mr. Howe's informant, the saucers were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government has a very high-powered radar set up in that area, and it is believed the radar interferes with the controlling mechanism of the saucers. No further evaluation was attempted by S.A. Kurtzman concerning the above. This is an official memorandum, March of 1950. It's all just interesting stuff. Oh, this is okay. So someone made a supercut. It's 30 minutes long of all the UFO videos released by the Department of War in the first drop. And so it's like, hit me with the theories, bros. We can just watch a little bit of this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, like just going through it all. Yeah, there we go. What is that, right? Just kind of skipping through these different objects. Yeah. There's some pretty crazy ones. There's that one that looks like a star that we're going to get to. Oh, there's something. Okay. Wow. This one's kind of blowing my mind. This one here. This one here. I'll tell you why. That light that's flying around, you guys can see that? See, I want to see that maneuver again. Okay, this right here. That movement. That movement. That's it. Okay, so this is where I'll tell you my UFO experience, okay? I've shared this story before, but as I was just kind of combing through and I saw that particular kind of movement, the way that light moved is identical. It's like I've been trying to describe this since it happened to me. This happened to me, I gotta say, 2014, 2015, because it was right before we were going to finish doing that tour, and I was going to be moved permanently from Toronto to British Columbia, right? So about 2015 is when I came to British Columbia. So it's around then, 2014, 2015 is when I had this experience. I was teaching at my dojo in Vaughan, Ontario at the time. And I had a student there that we were good friends with. He and his family were members of the club, really good guy. And he invited us up to his cabin. You go up north towards Barrie, and a lot of people have, cabins, and there's lakes and things like that. So we went up to his property, and we had to actually take a boat from where we park our vehicle. He'd take a boat over to where he's at, and he's got this basically cabin in the woods. He had a whole bunch of people there for a weekend, and we ended up going and staying up there, and we were playing board games, having some drinks, having some fun. And it was right as the evening was beginning. So the sun was coming down, starting to get dark. The stars were just popping up there because there's very little light pollution. And I had been living in Toronto, so I didn't get to see a lot of stars up there. And I remember before I started I wasn't drinking at this point of the evening. It was just starting. We had just eaten, and I went outside because I'm like, bro, I just got to go see the view. Like, I got to see these stars. He's like, yeah, go. I'll come out and meet you in a minute. I'll bring you a beer. And I'm like, perfect. He's like, what kind of beer you want? I'm like, oh, whatever you got. So I go out, and I'm just standing there looking up and just loving it. I love stargazing. I watch the sky every night. I'm always out looking at the stars. And in Toronto, you see like 5 stars because there's just so much light. You can't see anything. But out there, it was the first time in a long time I had seen that kind of a sky, clear sky. And I'm by myself. My full faculties are present. I've been interested in UFOs my whole life. I look at stuff in the sky all the time, like, oh, what's that? What's that? Oh, it's satellite. And up until that moment, I was I was always like, no, I'm not. I'm just seeing airplanes. I'm just seeing satellites or inexplicable things. I was very skeptical of my own observation right away because I don't want to make anything up. If I have an experience, I want it to be real, right? That's my mindset. And I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm looking at these stars, and there's like a billion of them, and there's some brighter than others, right? And as I'm gazing the sky, I'm kind of taking it all in. I do a few of these, and then one of the stars that was previously fixed starts to move exactly like this exactly like this. Yeah. That fast acceleration, slowdown, turning, the fact that it's not following a straight line. Like satellites don't do this. Airplanes don't do this. It moves it moved in a way that was just unnatural. Like I've seen airplanes, I've watched the snowbirds, I've watched the sky. Like I said, I know what I'm looking at to at least a certain degree. Something moving like that I'm thinking was a star, and then it starts moving and it proceeds to do this. One kind of moved in like a circular and then looped off. The one I saw moved in a square shape and then moved away and then disappeared and then came back. And I saw it happen 3 times. Then my friend comes out. He brings me the beer. He's like, "Hey," and I'm sitting there just like, "Buddy." Now I'll tell you something about my friend. I don't know. I've never talked about UFOs with him. I never talked about any of the other research into mysteries or the way I knew him was just from talking about the Joneses and talking about martial arts and talking about family stuff and being a dad. It was all very superficial stuff. And I'm sitting there going, "Buddy, do you see what I'm seeing? Look up." And he's like, What? He looks up. He watches this thing do that with the square shape 2 more times. So that's like 5 times total. I see this thing do that funky thing and then go away. His kind of like happy-go-lucky, "What's up? What, you see like a bird or something?" Like, and his eyes start bulging out of his head. He's still holding the 2 beers. He's like, "What the?" And I look at him like, "Bro, go through the checklist with me. Airplanes." He's like, "I don't." He couldn't even speak. He's like, I'm like, "Satellites." He's like, I'm like, "Stars, asteroids. Do planets move around? Like, what the hell is that?" He's like, "We come in shaking. The party's going on. Everybody's playing freaking Scrabble." I don't know what they're doing, playing cards. Music is going. I sit down by the fireplace with him and I'm shaking. He's like shaking. He's like, "What the?" We couldn't stop talking about it. Shortly thereafter, I moved. We said our goodbyes. I haven't spoken to him since. I should try to get in touch with him and be like, "Do you remember that shit? Here's the video of what they just released." So that was one of my encounters it's still in my head. I can smell what the trees smelled like when I saw that. And it moved exactly like that video. Fascinating. What is it? What is it? Is it demons? Here's another one. A few witnesses have reported seeing crewmen who landed from the objects, who were described as 3.5 to 4 feet tall, wearing what appeared to be spacesuits and helmets. Author Edwards concludes this book with a prediction that in the near future, UFOs will make an overt landing or deliberate contact with Earth. A copy of this letter is being directed to Denver in view of the contract awarded to Dr. Edward U. Condon for the Condon Report. The above is being called to the Bureau's the Bureau's attention in view of the press report of mounting pressure for a civilian-controlled investigative agency to handle UFO matters. So they're just starting to collect the reports for the Condon Report in there, I think. Okay, this is super touchy for people, but here we go. Everybody's been all about the moon landing hoax, okay? And I understand why. I'm not against anybody. I had the same theory for the longest time. And I changed my view specifically to be like, there's other ways of explaining some of the anomalies that moon hoaxers or moon landing deniers put out there. And the only other explanation, other than the fact that a lot of the points they bring up are easily they've been destroyed again and again, okay? But there's still anomalies when it comes to NASA, obviously. And there's definitely anomalies when it comes to what happened with the moons in 1969, those missions. You either explain it as being the whole thing was filmed on a movie set in LA and the whole thing was a hoax and we didn't get there and blah, 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 blah. Or the theory that I take is that they did go, and the weirdness around that and the classification around that and the missing footage and the things like that and the reaction of the astronauts when they came back, where they looked very sullen and very, we could explain that away as just, oh, well, they've just been through a life altering experience. They're absolutely exhausted. They don't know, their bearing on reality has been scrambled. So we could go there. Or the theory is that they did go, but they just didn't show us what they found when they went there. And that explains the weirdness and the classification and the weirdness with NASA. Now, if you read Richard Hoagland's book, Dark Mission, that he wrote with Mike Barra, they take this on in every angle imaginable and give you a middle ground theory that you've got. Again, they give you a binary on all the YouTube debate channels. Okay. You're either going to get the, I don't know, FTFE guy versus some guy who thinks the earth is 6,000 years old and the Bible is a literal document and that the earth is flat. So you get two extremes. You get that extreme. You get, the dogmatist materialist versus the dogmatist religionist. And you don't get the middle ground guys in there on these debates. Okay. As fun as the debates are. And so a Richard Hoagland would be your guy. And there's other guys like that too. And Hoagland was unique because he was in the newsroom during the launch of those Apollo missions. And he saw some anomalous things going on. And his claim, and I've played this before, I'm not going to play it here, but his claim is that the moon hoax, the idea that the whole thing was hoaxed. And of course, there is no evidence to this date of the hoax event, right? But he was saying that started as the astronauts were already in orbit, where there was a JPL guy in the newsroom on the day of the Apollo mission that was squiring around some guy in a long coat who kept handing out these packages to the CNN guys, the MSNBC guys, the different media desks. Okay. And Hoagland was a news reporter at the time. He was part of reporting it. So he was there. And he says they were dropping off these packages, and one of the packages had a rolled up flag in it, like an American flag. And it had a list of all of the points of the moon hoax claims. And they were being handed out to the media as the event is happening. The first Apollo mission. And he's like, I wish I would have kept it, the package that one of these desks was given, or that someone has it. He's been putting out calls for anybody that ever got one of those packages from whatever this guy who's walking around with this JPL dude who's passing this information out, which is literally the same script, the same talking points that Bart Sibrel and everybody else that's moon hoax denier, they're all using it. It started in the newsroom in NASA as this whole thing was going off, or wherever they did that brought the news media together for the event. So his theory in that book is that there is a cult that got embedded in the high levels of NASA, the high levels, not the low levels, just up at the top. And it's made up of these Masons. He calls them the magicians. And these are the guys that work with like Majestic 12. And these are the guys that are up on the high level of this controlled, whatever this conspiracy is. So he basically just looks at it as, there's definitely conspiratorial elements to NASA. There's definitely a compartmentalized hierarchy. There's definitely things they're not telling us, but that the moon hoax was a conspiracy put in place to demoralize America by the Russian communists, who had every intention of spoiling the pot and not allowing the true story of what went down to come out, and to try to get everybody in this idea that they didn't just accomplish the greatest feat ever, and to just basically poo-poo the whole thing. And that NASA, there were agents within NASA who worked for this cabal that were part of insinuating the moon hoax into being and starting it as this sacred cow. It's basically become a religion at this point that people accept on faith, that that's what happened. And he's like, this was done by our enemies, and there were moles within NASA that helped bring it into being. So how funny would it be if NASA, the elements of NASA that are working with KGB or whoever the enemies of America would have been, because we know there's a deep state, we know that has a history. He's basically like, what if I told you NASA was ground zero for the NASA conspiracies of the moon hoax. And he goes through it in his book. It's his theory, take it or leave it. It's another explanation, okay? And while we're looking at this, we're getting stuff coming out in these files that are vindicating what a lot of us in this field have thought, which is that it's not that the whole moon program or NASA program is a 100% fabricated lie, the way the flat earthers want to bring it out, that's part of a psyop. And it helps cover the real truth, right? So both the crazy conspiracy guys and which are basically just spouting a bunch of enemy propaganda, they are one part of the control. And then the other part of the control is the mainstream NASA story about the moon missions. And again, you're given a binary. And when you talk to people, they either sit in one of those categories. There is no third category. I found that interesting. Like, well, what if some of this conspiracy stuff can be explained as part of this classification process? They don't want you to know what they discovered up there. Hoagland's thesis was that they discovered remnants and ruins of lost civilizations, similar to the Giza Plateau, similar to Adam's calendar, similar to some of these old Cyclopean ruins that are on the Earth, that they have those on some of the like Moon and Mars or whatever. He was the one with the face on Mars and all that. And even if you don't like all of his pieces of evidence, he just combed through the actual photographs. I always thought he was kind of onto something in general, that the cover-up is the cover-up of the greater story of human history and the greater story of what's really going on in our own neighborhood that is not to be disclosed. And we're getting hints of it. Okay. So there's the backstory, as I just give you a different angle on it, that you still get to keep a conspiracy if that's what you like. It's just that it's not what is the popular form of the conspiracy. There's a sort of other alternative way of looking at it, that it's not that they covered it up and made it fake and staged it in a movie set. It's that they didn't show you everything they found when they got there. And it's because they didn't want you to know about this subject. So that's the other theory. Take it for what it's worth. That said, here's this one. Let me just pull this up. Breaking. According to the newly government-released UFO files, 1969 Apollo 11 astronauts did see multiple UFOs on the moon, and it shocked them to their core. You got to remember what these guys would have been raised in, sort of the American culture of the time. This would have been mind-blowing for them, right? The UFOs sort of tailgated them. Objects that resembled spacecrafts and fluid-looking objects, possibly plasma. Oh, this is interesting. I want to talk about Josh's thing there. Now you know why they looked mortified in the Apollo 11 press briefings in 1969. These are more interesting than the FLIR footages they released. More images of the documents in the comments. So here's all the documents of just kind of going through the sightings that these astronauts allegedly had. And there's lots in this particular one. There's lots on this idea. So there you go. Another take. Now, this is from Tim Burchett about Jimmy Carter. And this, again, if this is true, if what they're talking about is true, it makes sense with what I'm talking about regarding how this affects the human mind, learning about this. I'm talking about learning it for real. It's fun when it's X-Files and Avengers and movies and documentaries and Bob Lazar. Like, that's fun. But when it's told to you, let's say you're briefed by your military intelligence about the reality of the situation, none of this fantasy shit, reality. Every time the reality has allegedly been given to one of these governments or one of these presidents or prime ministers, they're shattered to their core. That's interesting. So what is it about this phenomena that is like that crazy, that deep, that impactful, that they have done everything they can to block it from coming out en masse? Until now, maybe, and we'll see even if they let us get the whole thing. But here it is. I'll read you the caption here from David. He says, have you ever wondered why the government believed we couldn't handle the truth about UFOs and extraterrestrials? It was never about their existence or their ability to abduct and experiment on us. It was about religion and experimentation. I've said before, Tim is a good friend. I've never caught him in a lie, and he's the only person in DC I trust. What he says here may shatter your world. So we're just going to wrap. Oh, Monty's here. I'm playing this last video, and then we're doing it. I just got to do this last one. Okay, last one, guys. I promise. Here we go.
I don't think Trump knows. I mean, these people have kept this stuff secret. Here's another thing. I was in one meeting, and a guy said, what about the president on this? And he said, the president's on a need-to-know basis. Now, that's a federal employee saying that he or she has information that the president is not allowed to see. And I just was aghast, man. I said, that's the kind of crap you see on the sci-fi network or something.
Right.
But that'd be the title of my book. I mean, that ought to tell you right there that this thing is a cover up. And it's kind of like MK Ultra. I don't think we're going to get they're not going to tell us everything. I really don't. I don't think they're going to give us half of what we should get.
But you think we're going to get something?
I think we'll get something.
Do you know Hal Puthoff? Do you know Hal Puthoff?
Do what?
Do you know Hal Puthoff?
No,
Do
I
you
don't.
know who he is?
I thought you were how put off you are right
No.
now. I was like, how put off are you?
Hal Puthoff was in the documentary as well. He was in The Age of Disclosure, and
Okay.
he was a guest on the podcast. And one of the things that he told me is that during the Bush administration, they brought in him and a bunch of other scientists and thought leaders, and what was explained to him was that they are considering disclosure and that there have been visits of these super intelligent beings from somewhere else, that we have retrieved crashed vehicles, and that we have biological remains.
That's correct.
And we are talking about disclosing. We would like you to make a list of all the ways that it'll negatively affect society and all the ways that it'll positively affect society, and attach a numerical value to these things. And they all did it, and every one of them said the negatives far outweigh the positives in terms of the impact on government, the impact on the economy, religion, all these different factors, and how it would disrupt society. And in the end, they decided not to disclose.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. I just don't buy it.
You don't buy it?
I don't buy it. I mean, I don't doubt what he's saying. I know all those guys now that you mentioned. I was in a movie, of course, and I met them all afterwards. But I just don't buy that. I think we should know. Let us know. Let us decide.
I believe that too, but I wonder what that meeting was like and whether or not they were being truthful to these people or whether it was a thought experiment.
Allegedly, when they told Jimmy Carter, he cried.
That's what I heard too.
It was. I won't go into all of it, but I was in a meeting.
What would make him cry?
I don't know. He's a very sensitive guy. But
I understand, but I mean, like,
he was also,
I cried when I saw Old Yeller.
Yeah, I did too. Still cry. But they, he had seen a UFO. He was on a Navy sub, nuclear sub, and I don't know if he saw that when he was on the sub or not. I can't remember. But here he said, that guy was president of the United States, and
they told him something, and supposedly he cried.
And I was in the meeting, and that was brought up, and the guy that they were trying to trip up gave the date of that meeting, and he said, you can go to the Carter Library and pull up that date, and you'll know there's one person, they omitted their name, which who knows who that was, but they list the meeting and where he was when he got that briefing.
Wow.
This is the coming great deception.
Yeah. This is the coming great deception. Okay, so there you go, guys. Tim Burchett, he's been close to this whole thing with Grush and all these new whistleblowers, and he's kind of behind the scenes, and he's a congressman. So it's just interesting to hear him go and talk about that, about the effect that this allegedly had on Jimmy Carter, and no doubt any of these other presidents, and also just how out of the loop they are. This is something we've kind of always known in the UFO lore. So interesting, guys. Hopefully I've given you, this is, by the way, my lovely wife, Monica. Good to see you here, baby.
They're thinking.
I don't want to forget.
They think I'm weighing in.
You're just
on this.
weighing in. No, we're just going to wrap up this stream, and then I'm going to restart this over on Substack. We'll kick it off the Dave and Monica show over there on Substack. It is free to attend. I'm not putting it behind the paywall right now, but you do have to watch that one on Substack. But I just want to wrap up this show, and I could do this the amount of information I have on this, like what we've gone through videos, we've gone through reading stories from ancient times, modern times, showing you the information. Many of you out there are collecting this yourself. Many of you probably even have deeper research than I do, judging by the comments. And that's amazing. And all I want to say is keep your curiosity alive. Avoid the binaries in thinking. We're all watching this happen at this time in history. And so walk away from people that are telling you they know everything that's happening. I'm not trying to say that. I have no claims that I know what's going on right now. We're all going to find out together. But what I do have is information that's been gathered by independent researchers and curious people throughout time in the modern age that is outside of government, outside of NASA, outside of even some of the crazy UFO circles. And I've had my own things. I'm sure many of you have had your own stories. And when you put it all together, I personally can't come to any other conclusion than that there is something very mysterious and very massive happening with this subject, that it's relevant to all the other subjects. It's relevant to our existence here, and it's relevant to the big questions that we have as human beings. And that's why it's important. And regardless of what it shakes out as being, I think it's worthy to keep an open mind, pay attention, research, yes, everything they're leaking out right now, but also go to the brilliant people who've labored their entire lives to write books, document this stuff, and to ask this big question, which I personally hope we can get the answer to. I'm with Tim Burchett on the fact that he doesn't like the fact that the government believes that we're not capable of hearing this. All I was saying when I was bringing that up was that I understand that thinking. That is the military mindset. That is the government mindset. But I definitely think we're ready for the truth, that we deserve the truth. But maybe this won't be a collective thing after all. Maybe this will be each one of us pursuing this in our own way, and the truth will be revealed to those who do the work required to actually discern what the truth is. So there it is. Thanks for tuning in today for this long 3-hour+ episode. Please join us over on Substack. And I'm going to kick off the David Monica show. We're going to go have some fun